Shit, what happened? I can't.
As you're logging in, everyone, if your name is not showing up in your little box, please click on participants, then hover on your name and click more and rename yourself so that our recording secretary can record everyone who is here at the meeting. Thank you. As people are coming into the meeting, please rename yourself if your name is not showing up with your first and last name. For the recording secretary, you can do so by clicking on participants, hovering over your name, clicking more, and renaming yourself. Thank you.
Hold the space bar.
I think we have everybody. I'm just waiting. Can you tell it? Is Scott? Okay, he just texted me. He's on. Okay. All right. Excuse me. We're going to go ahead and get started. It is 5:32. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A S18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation of the number of people who may gather in one place, this meeting of the Middleton School Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner: video and/or teleconference. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Middleton School Committee website either an audio, video, or meeting minutes as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, I would like everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now take remarks from the public. Do we have anybody?
Give Steve a minute to exit.
Yep, we do. Just, yeah, let me get back to
Ryan,
that.
rather. Yep.
Yeah, hold on.
Josh, do you want me to go with that, Ryan?
Okay, yep. So we have first Beth Ortons. Beth, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dear school committee members, Dr. Morrison, Dr. Carrero, and Mr. Bryson, thank you for this time to speak. My name is Beth Ortons, and I have 2 children in 1st grade and 2nd grade, successfully attending hybrid learning at Howe Manning. I also teach in-person hybrid kindergarten with a higher risk community than Middleton. 2 cohorts of students a day, 4 days a week. As an educator, I'm concerned with last week's school committee meeting promoting the theory of herd immunity without a vaccine during a pandemic as a rationale to force our children back to school full time when as a community we are not prepared to do so. In my humble opinion, anyone who suggests that guidance without being an expert in public health or infectious diseases is acting irresponsibly. After 18 days, there have been 2 positive cases in school. I asked the school committee to reevaluate their desire for return to full day. I encourage you all to fully understand the impact of transitioning our students to full day at this time. The hybrid model of half days is working. Students are getting 4 hours of core instruction time, establishing a meaningful relationship with their teachers and peers, all while being safely distant, wearing face coverings in their classrooms. If a full day scenario happens, then many parents who have supported the current hybrid model will be faced with a difficult decision. Either keep our kids in school all day in a riskier environment or bring them back home for remote learning. The hybrid approach is working. The consequence of changing our approach could result in rearranging classrooms, reassigning additional teachers to support the remote learning, forcing our kids to transition to another classroom, meeting new teachers and peers, and learning yet another new routine. Only after 19 days. This is a disruption of learning and will negatively impact the social and emotional well-being of all of our students. I acknowledge that there has been no federal or state guidance surrounding these issues. However, as a school committee member, you are responsible for the health and well-being of our children, not what is best for their parents. If you are truly committed to the social and emotional well-being and education of Middleton children, then I expect you to keep the schedule of half-day hybrid learning as an option for all students. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Eric Golovenchenko. You may unmute.
Thank you very much. So first I want to say how much I appreciate all the hard work the school committee has been putting into all these meetings during this time of national crisis. I have, however, been seeing some things on social media, and I heard the same comments at the recent school committee meeting, and it had me concerned about potential fundamental misunderstanding in the town about COVID-19 and herd immunity. Since other than this most recent comment, I haven't seen any public correction to my knowledge of those comments, I just wanted to say something here. So the best estimates that I've seen so far say that herd immunity for COVID-19 can be reached if about 70% of the population has a robust immune response to the disease. This can be achieved through natural infection, But current research is showing that the natural immune response after infection may not be as strong as a vaccinated immune response. And that achieving immunity through vaccination sidesteps all the pain, suffering, and sometimes death associated with getting this disease. If we use the lowest ranges of estimates for mortality rates and long-term health effects from the CDC, the WHO, and the Mayo Clinic, we can run a few numbers. Middleton, if it were achieved herd immunity through natural infection, would see a total of about 7,000 people in the town infected. That would leave at least 61 of our neighbors dead and more than 1,400 in our community left with long-term health effects. I've seen that some people want our community to loosen COVID-19 related restrictions faster so the economy can recover faster. Others want it so our children can get back to the type of school they had this time last year. But the economy won't recover faster if so many people get sick so quickly. And our children will not see the kind of school they had this time last year until we have this pandemic under control, which means keeping up restrictions that the health experts recommend and not pushing the envelope. To paraphrase what several public health experts have said over the past few months, if we do just enough to protect ourselves, it will feel like too much because large numbers of people will not be getting sick. If we do just a little bit too little to protect ourselves, we open the door for COVID-19 to race through our community and we will see the effects. Thank you.
Natasha, there are 3 more hands. The next is Alicia Depesha. You can unmute.
Hi, I'm reading this letter on behalf of several families that live in Middleton. We would like the school committee to please vote for a full return back to school. We do not feel that the children are getting enough learning time.
So stop talking.
I'm sorry?
Nope, go ahead. Somebody would like to mute.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. We do not feel that the children are getting enough learning time while they are in school half days. The children are able to have lunch in their classrooms, and we do not feel that this will affect them in any negative way. It is difficult to get the children focused back on schoolwork after having an hour to eat lunch and play at home. When they do log back in after the break, it is time for their asynchronous specialist work. As parents, we are concerned that this work is not guided or graded by a teacher, and that this hour accounts for 20% of their time on learning each day. We feel that with our low number of COVID cases, the social distancing, the masks, the COVID response team, that our school is doing a great job of mitigating the risk. We have followed DESE guidelines, purchased HEPA and MERV 13 filters, ensured 6 feet of distance between adult and children, and for all the reasons stated, we think that everyone will thrive and adapt. We have done our best to prioritize safety, and now we believe it is time to prioritize education. Thank you for your consideration.
Natasha, next we have Dale Marshall. Dale, you may unmute. There you go. I just did it for you, Dale. Oh, no.
There you go.
There
Sorry.
you go.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dale Marshall. I'm the nurse currently working at Howe Manning. And I just wanted to also make some comments about last week's meeting. The first comment that I would like to make is, I know it was mentioned that all the staff are comfortable working at the school with the children there and how high morale is. And I just wanted to know if any of the school committee members have actually talked to any of the staff, because I see them on a daily basis, and it's my job to help everybody emotionally, physically, spiritually, to make sure everybody is well. And the staff are not well inside. They're stressed, they're anxious. You talk about having 6 feet for the teachers to teach. That's if they stand in a corner by their desk and never go around the classroom and help the students. And that's what they're doing. they're helping the students, even thinking in their head, is what I'm doing okay? Because the students are their highest priority. They put on a good face because they are professionals and they act with professionalism. So although they're having these feelings inside, they're putting on a good face. They're doing what they need to do. There was another comment made that I hope the teachers don't take out on my child what my feeling is about school. That almost made me cry. No staff member in our school would ever take anything out on a child because we didn't agree with what their parents said. I'm glad they brought up herd immunity because I was floored. I'm not even going to address that. But what I would like to say is when you talked about, oh, we've been in school 3 weeks and there's only been one case, there is a 2-week turnaround with COVID. Now we've been in school for what, 19? This is the beginning of the 4th week. Now there's 2 cases. 2 weeks haven't even gone by for those cases as of yet. We have had 29 students either staying home or getting sent home in 19 days because of COVID-like symptoms, and there's still 11 pending tests. So you have not talked to any of the people on the front line. And that's what I think you need to do. We need to.
Dale, we're at the 3-minute mark. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and the final hand up is Carrie Windmiller. Carrie, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll do my best to keep this under 3 minutes. I wanted to give a quick statement on behalf of the teachers because I know we haven't been asked to share our firsthand experience of how the hybrid and remote has gone so far and compares to the education we're accustomed to delivering. I know the parents have already taken the survey, but we feel strongly we need to let people know all of the information about the differences between the 3 models that haven't been brought up and about how they actually look and play out throughout the day. Hybrid is set for 8:30 to 12:30, but as you can imagine, this time is cut short by arrival, dismissal, mask, and bathroom breaks. This is in person, 6 feet away, with little socialization or movement by the students until they have a snack break. If you were to walk around or ask how it's going with the teachers and the students, you would see them working hard, doing their very best under very uncomfortable, somewhat unsafe conditions, and it's nearly impossible to keep 6 feet while instructing students, and a huge challenge to even hear them through the masks. Overall, those students have been fantastic with the mask. From about 8:30 to 10:30, their masks are fully on and they're fully engaged. By about 10:30, 11, you start to see a need for a longer break more often. By about 12:15, you see the masks have started to droop. The energy level is down. Most students have had enough and are eager to get home without a mask and under the strict conditions of staying 6 feet away and washing their hands constantly. There are few opportunities for small group instruction as this is unsafe and not 6 feet apart. In this option, while everyone is being exposed for a half day, they're actually able to get their core content in and then have lunch, time outside, and a specialist safely at home. I think that's a big misconception. They actually are getting all their core content in. We see the younger grades are making progress in person, and although it's difficult and heartbreaking to see this separation and to ensure these proper health guidelines at the cost of their social, emotional, and physical enjoyment, the teachers feel strongly that this half day is about as much as they could handle. Remote learning, hard for everyone, parents, students, teachers, administrators. It's definitely been by far the most work for a teacher with all the planning and implementing of strategies. We're doing it though. We're doing it all day, every day, into the night, on the weekend hours. We have really started to get into the groove and are pleasantly surprised with how much time on learning we're actually able to provide in this way. It's truly the most robust option. It's the closest to the regular day instruction time compared to the other 2 models. Yes, unfortunately, there are negative components, but overall, obviously, it's the safest and the one with the most time on learning. And most importantly, if you hear nothing, just hear, please hear this. We hope the committee and the parents can hear that if you choose the fully in all day option, the time on learning will actually decrease. The time in the classroom will be spent masked, isolated, filled with breaks, sanitizing procedures, and will not include the recess, group work, and peer socialization that we all want. Fully in is going to add a sad substitute for recess and lunch. We'll still include remote specialists with even more masks and bathroom breaks. You'll be extending the time for exposure while gaining little instructional time. Again, that's the misconception. It's actually going to be less. And if we are fully transparent, again, it's going to be less, it's going to be more breaks, and that's the biggest piece I want people to get from this. We thank you for your time and consideration, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions about what these models have actually been like, or any other expertise we can provide from our firsthand experience. Thanks.
Natasha, that's all the hands that are raised for public comment.
Thank you. Okay, we had a few extra comments. We normally do 3. So I'd like to push the approval of the meeting minutes to the following regular meeting. So that would bring us to the report of the superintendent.
Can you hear me? Great.
Yes.
Thank you. So Natasha, I will push those meeting minutes out to the next meeting. Is that what I heard you just say? Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Great, no problem.
Thank you.
Report-wise, for keeping along with the agenda, for Steve and I, Steve will talk a little bit about transportation. I think really the main discussion and topic tonight, where we had just met last week, is really just to focus in on the survey results and to talk about transportation. So no, major report from me as compared to where we were last Thursday. I think Steve will probably have the same feedback from his perspective, so we can get right into the survey if that's okay with the chair.
Yes, thank you.
Steve, is that correct for you?
I'm ready to go. Whenever works.
Great. So moving into new business, I just want to give a little context for the survey. I'll ask Brian to share it so we can all look at it together. And so just from a context perspective in regard to the survey, so as the community knows, we put the survey out on Friday. Appreciate Natasha's help with that, Steve Gudaitis' help with that, as that survey was worked on. So that went out on Friday. There was a follow-up question that we wanted to have a comparable piece of data on for 4 to 6, which was collected from a K to 3 perspective. So there was a follow-up question. And then typically what has to happen with a survey, when we put a survey out, sometimes people take it more than once. And so we have to go through and, for the same child. So we have to go through and see if there's any duplicates. And then what we do is we eliminate or remove any duplicate responses because we collect some demographic information up front. And then we compare it to the overall list and we see who hasn't had a chance to respond yet. And then we do a direct email out to the families who did not have a chance to respond in the original time frame. We know everybody's moving in 100 miles an hour in a number of different directions. So that's what we did yesterday. We sent out a direct email to families for the full K to 6 survey that hadn't had the opportunity to take it. And then we sent out a follow-up to the grade 4 to 6 families that didn't have an opportunity to take it. And then the data was worked through today in terms of crunched and put into a presentation. Steve Gudaitis, I thank him for his help with that. And then I know Steve and Natasha reviewed the document earlier today just to make sure that everything was matching up. And so that leads us to where we are. And so Brian, if you can go to that next slide. And so from a response rate perspective, that's why we go through that work of, as I said, eliminating any duplicate responses that may have been in there, comparing it to our rosters and our class lists and our overall student roster, and then doing a direct email out to folks who didn't have a chance to take it. So we had a response rate of about 95.8 at Fuller that you can see, 93.1 at Howe, for an average of about 94.3%. So we thank the community for participating in the survey, following along with the emails and the texts to gather that information and take the survey. So that's appreciated. One of the questions that was asked that we followed up with grades 4 to 6 that was asked was around learning model preference by school. And so you can see here what Steve did was he identified it by school, and then we have a slide in which it's broken down by grade level. But this was a very specific question that, what would be your preferred learning model? Not if the school committee did this, what would you do? Or if this decision was made, what would you do? Or if this was done, what would you do? It was strictly a preference question. And the preference was based upon remote, hybrid, and in-person. And so you can see at Fuller Meadow that there was a 18% preference for remote, a 30% preference for hybrid, and about a 51.7% preference for the in-person. And then at Howe Manning, it was 16.1% remote, 23.4% hybrid, and then 60% in-person. So when you look at it as sort of the perspective of in-person versus not in-person, you can combine those first two numbers. You can combine on Fuller Meadow the 30 and the 18, and you see that's about a 48 to 52% split. And then for Howe Manning, when you combine them, you can see that it's about a 60-40 split in terms of preference by school. Brian, if you go to that next slide. So then it was broken down by grade. So that same question kind of broken down even further to get a sense of where things stood by grade. And you can see there that the blue is the remote, the red is the hybrid, and then the yellow mustard color is the in-person. And you can kind of follow that same sort of idea of, if you think of it as like full in-person versus not full in-person, which is either the hybrid or the remote, you can get a sense of what those splits look like for each grade level. And then overall, when you do the average of all of the grade levels, it was about a 56.8 for a full-time in-person, and then a 44% on average for a not full-time in-person, which would either be the hybrid model or the remote model. Brian, if you go to that next slide. So now it's out of preference mode, right? So it's no longer in what would your preference be. So now it's a reaction to, if this type of decision was made, how would you respond? And so grades K to 3, if the school committee voted to transition K to 3 students from the current hybrid model to a full-time in-person model, how would you respond? And we have 70% who would transition to the full-time in-person learning, and then 30% who would transition to or remain in remote learning. And again, that's not a preference question, that's more, if this happens, then what would you do? Steve, Brian, if you can go to the next one. From a transportation perspective, grades K to 3, so this is not everybody in K to 3, it's of the 151 K to 3 students currently using transportation during hybrid learning. If the district transitions to full-time in person, would you continue to use the district transportation? And so that gave us a number of about 97% rather, 97.4, saying that of those eligible, of the 151 that are currently using it, they would continue to use it. And so that's helpful information for Steve Greenberg, and he'll share a little bit more in a minute around transportation. And then if the school committee votes, again, this is a question that was, if the school committee votes to transition grades 4 to 6 from remote learning to the hybrid learning model, how would you respond? And so my child would remain in remote learning. My child would transition to the hybrid model of learning. So again, this was less a preference question and more a, what would you do if? And so if the school committee transitioned to a grade 4 to 6 from remote to hybrid, 80% say that they would transition to the hybrid, and 19% indicate that they would stay in remote. And then the next one, again, this is a if-then kind of a thing. If the school committee voted to transition grades 4 to 6 from remote to the in-person model of learning, how would you respond? So you can see the numbers there, about 25 to almost 26% would remain in remote learning, and about 74% would transition to the in-person model. Like the previous question, not a preference question, but an if-then type of a question. Transportation-wise, grades 4 to 6 for those eligible at grade 4 to 6. If your child transitions to either the hybrid or the in-person model, would they use district transportation? 30% no, because I will not have my child utilize it when the district was to transition to either a hybrid or a full-time in-person. 16 no, because my child would be remaining in a remote learning model. And then 54 yes, and if eligible, my child would utilize district transportation if and when the district transitions to hybrid or full-time in-person models of learning. That gives us a little bit more of a sense of transportation. Again, Steve will be able to talk, Greenberg will be able to talk a little bit more about that momentarily. And there's one more, I think, Brian. Or is that the last one?
That's the last slide.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Brian, for driving there.
Yep, you're welcome.
And I appreciate Steve Goditis working through that data set. Steve Greenberg, I know you've done some work around transportation today and what some of those pieces would be as the school committee considers all of the data and all of the information. So what is your perspective on what you saw from the answers to the transportation questions?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Morrison. With regard to transportation, when I look at the survey results and I focus in on two factors. One, how many of the K through 3 current students that are using transportation, how many of them will change their perspective, reducing the number of students on a bus. So I looked at that, and for me, I only saw a decrease of 4 students. But then I also focused on the 4 through 6 responses and how many would use transportation. So to answer that question, there were 125 responses that would use regular day transportation. And so when I factor or add in, I look at the student list that are assigned to buses right now for K through 3, that's about 164 students. So sure, there's probably some little margin of error, but nothing, in my opinion, that's substantial. When I add 164 to 125, that gives me 289 potential riders, okay? And as far as seats are available, we have 9 buses times 25 seats based on the current DESI guidance. That equates to 225 seats. So we are in a deficit, for lack of a better word, of about 64 seats based upon the survey results. Back on October 8th, I emailed the committee to give you an estimated cost of implementing additional buses. Hopefully everybody had the opportunity to read that email. It was not just transportation, but also custodial services as well. In speaking with NRT, they were gracious enough to give me a daily rate for additional transportation under the assumption that we would have a staggered start. And so that's $90 a day. And if we say, okay, we stagger the times, we're going to need to just about double the fleet to cover the lay of the land. So that means the buses will be running twice. And so with that being said, my calculation was 90 days or $90 a day times 9 buses times 153 days. Of course, the number of days can change depending on steps that the committee takes. That equates to about $124,000. The other option for the committee would be to revisit the level of service that we provide for regular day transportation. And what that means is that we would literally be following Mass General Law, Chapter 71, subsection 68, that we would only provide transportation for students that live more than 2 miles from their assigned school. And so the unit of measure, or how we would determine that unit of measure, would be working through NRT's software, TransFinder. That would be the standard. So someone could debate with me and say, well, I'm looking at it on Google Maps. I appreciate that, but this is the standard we're using, and we're making that abundantly clear. So what we would do is we would take those survey results. We would overlay it with TransFinder, so NRT would have to do that work. to figure out, okay, this is how many students would be eligible based upon the survey to participate in transportation being 2 miles or more. Keeping in mind that the survey is not legally binding, that people can change their mind. And I do expect that we will have that people will change their mind, or they had issue, they weren't able to do the survey. And I'm basing that on my experience, or our experience, with K through 3 for Middleton. And that we've had in excess of 24 requests for transportation, which we've accommodated. So that's a quick snapshot on transportation. What questions can I answer for the committee?
Hi, Steve. I have one. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
okay. So what will we do with siblings who one attends Fuller Meadow, one attends Helmanning? How are we going to do that? Is one child allowed to take the bus and then the other child isn't?
It's a very good question. If I'm saying to you just strictly on that 2 mile scenario that I present to you, the answer is yes. One sibling would, if they live more than 2 miles, like they go to Fuller Meadow and they live more than 2 miles, that student is eligible to participate in transportation. Yet the other student, the sibling that goes to Helmanning and is 2 miles or less, they would not be. It's gonna create the 2 mile piece, and I'm not trying to sway you, you just need to know this. The 2 mile piece is gonna create a lot of emotion. People are not gonna be happy. You're gonna get a lot of feedback on that.
Okay. And then I guess one more question is that if we didn't have a full bus at 2 miles, can we then back it up to
We would.
1.9, 1.8, 1.7?
Yes, that's another good question. Okay. Yes, we would absolutely look at that. So we would do the 2 mile piece first. And then we would say, okay, how many seats do we got left, if any? Okay, let's look at 1.9. With that being said, Chris, what we have to always be aware of is that people are entitled to change their mind. So let's say we do go through that scenario and we back it up. If someone changes their mind and they live more than 2 miles, well, they got priority over the person that lives 1.9, even though 1.9 filled out the survey. Again, survey's not legally binding.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
This isn't really a question, but I did speak with someone at DESE last week, and I was curious how other schools are doing lunches and buses. And her comment was most schools that are hybrid, I'm going to turn my video off. Most schools that are hybrid or full in person have eliminated busing below the 2 mile mark because so many schools just don't have the funding for it, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's not ideal. I have, in any other year, I have 3 kids that ride the bus. We love the bus. But I mean, I think it's something that we need to seriously look at as a board. It's definitely not ideal, but I mean, really none of this is, so.
It's not loud. It's upstairs. It's fine.
That's not me.
Does anybody have any thoughts on, eliminating buses for those students under the 2 mile mark? Anybody from the board have any thoughts?
I also agree that that's what most other towns seem to be doing, especially if you want to bring everyone back.
I think given our circumstances, I mean, everything about the situation that we're in is tough for parents, families, what have you. I think to take away a service that we've provided for forever is really, it's asking a lot of parents. So I think there's a couple things to consider. If we're willing to spend, if it's $124,000, which that's worst case scenario, I'm thinking. You know, are we going to be, well, there's the cost. There's also the impact on traffic. So we're going to have to deal with that at the center of town and at Fuller Meadow, which, you know, I did a drop off. I did pick up in the beginning. I'm one of those 24 people that changed because I was getting home after the bus and using up all that time to, you know, from away from work so that I could get my child home. It's very inefficient. So I would argue that, you know, eliminate, I don't know what, I don't think the cost benefit ratio to taking away a service is worth it. I say, you know, if we're going to spend the money somewhere, we should spend it on the buses. And, you know, look at some of the other areas where we can cut costs.
I actually agree with Kristen. My kids don't even take the bus, but I don't think that we should be taking away a service from people that might be their own means to get into school.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It doesn't feel good. So where are we getting 124,000? Steve, you're muted.
Well, you have some capability within the COVID relief fund grant. You must spend those dollars by the end of December. So you're not going to be able to charge all of that 124 roughly to the COVID relief fund grant. That, quite frankly, we would have to commit it against the operating budget. So it'd be an unfunded expense. And we would have to watch it through the course of the year. And what I mean by watch it is that we may be going back to the schools and saying, because of this exposure and based on the things that we see, because there's going to be other things that will be unfunded that will be in front of us, that we may have to put on some type of partial or full spending freeze. And that's happened before in years past. So it's not something brand new, but it would be something that if I start to get, for lack of a better word, nervous about our situation, then I would go to the superintendent and we would start those discussions, you know, with possibly implementing a spending freeze if need be.
Steve, I have a question for you. If we, God forbid, have to go back to full remote at any point, are we committed by going with this? We're going to need extra buses, and I'm assuming you're changing the contract. Are we committed to that contract indefinitely?
No,
for
the contract does allow for it, Kristen, you know, that we have these situations. And I will say that NRT has been fantastic to work with. That I really have to commend the dispatcher, the vice president, their staff. They have, for all of the three of our districts, they have done incredible work. They're functioning under enormous amounts of pressure, and they are trying to get things done for all three districts. So I really give them a lot of credit. They have been great to work with. They are supportive of our situation. They have their own struggles in terms of staffing, that we will not be able to double the fleet. That we, in my opinion, we would have to do a staggered start if it is the will of the committee. So we would, to answer your question succinctly, Kristen, no, I think that if we gave them reasonable notice and let them know we've got a shift for whatever reason it may be, they will absolutely work with us. We would probably be obligated for that 78% commitment if we did go into a type of full remote learning, and I mean 78% of the existing contract, not 78% of the existing contract, plus the possibility of another 124.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Steve.
Can you walk us through what a staggered start would be like?
Madam Chair, I would say that I would defer to the superintendent and the building principals, but from my limited perspective, it would be, okay, one of the schools starts its normal time, and then you would, you know, depending on, is it a full day, half day, and then the second school would start a little later, so that the buses could complete their run and then go out and do it again. You need to have that time, so that's where the staggered start would come in. And then you'd have to do a staggered dismissal. I'm sorry?
Sorry, yeah, we're going to do the same thing for dismissal too, right?
Absolutely, yes, because you don't have the capacity. with that in mind, what everyone has to understand is that we have ourselves, we have Masconomet that's going to start up, and they're starting their regular time. So they're going to do regular morning, regular afternoon. They're also looking at late buses. So we share those resources. Oh, somebody's going to echo. We share those resources. And so we've got to make sure that whatever we do, we're not becoming a detriment to Masconomet and their ability to deliver services to their students. So we got to keep an eye on that.
So if you have students at both schools, so you're going to have say a Fuller Meadow pickup at 8:15, and then you're going to have a Howard Manning pickup at 8:40?
You say 8:40, I would say closer to 9. I would go back to NRT to tell me, okay, how much time do you need to get to the starting point to run them again? So we can, if it is the will of the committee, we can get specific about that, and I can get some exact answers and communicate it back.
Steve, if we don't, if we did the 2 mile radius, would we still do a stagger start, or we wouldn't be doing that then, right?
No, all right, so it's not 2 mile radius. It's not that I'm trying to mince with you. It's not a 2 mile radius. It is 2 miles from your assigned school. So
right.
That standard route or normal course that you would take to get to your school, that's how we would measure. So with that being said, I would want to double check to see, okay, how many that responded to the survey, K through 6, would be eligible for transportation, and then I know where I stand. My gut says we should be fine, but you don't know until I do the, until we do the work. So we have to push that information back to NRT. They're gonna have to run it through TransFinder and get it back to me. It's gonna take a little time. They've got a lot going on trying to get Boxford and Topsfield ready to go, a lot. So we got to get ready to communicate that to those families tomorrow for what I believe is a Thursday start.
Okay.
So know that it's just not going to happen really, really quick, but we'll try to go as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, is that something that needs to be voted on?
Hey, Fred. I mean,
Hi, Steve.
Dr. Morrison will correct me if I misspeak, but I think that it would be good for the committee to memorialize a course of action so that I have marching orders and I can move forward. But Dr. Morrison, correct me if I'm off base.
No, Steve's right. I think any action taken, we would want the school committee to memorialize for all the reasons Steve has identified. I think the points that have been raised are, points to consider, like everything has a cost, so to speak. And, what Chris and Kristen were articulating about, yes, if you go the 2 miles, you'll save perhaps on the bus cost. The cost will be tremendous, I would imagine, amounts of parent pickup and drop off happening from Fuller Meadow and Hal Manning, the loss of that service and so on and so forth. So whatever direction the committee decides to go, it's weighing all of the different components of it. Might there be police details that now have to be paid for because 114 is now backed up to the restaurants there a little bit down the way from Fuller Meadow, or the traffic is now out on 62 because of what's happening at Hal Manning. So there could be other costs associated with it just because the way our buildings are, there's only one way in and out of Fuller Meadow, and there's not many ways, 2 ways it looks like, right? If I think about it, 2 ways out of Hal Manning, right? In terms of surface roads and access and things like that. So all things to consider.
I'll make a motion. Oh, sorry, Fred.
I just don't want to get that ball rolling with NRT. I don't want that to hold up any plan of kids going back to school.
Yeah, I agree. I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to move forward with, Steve, I have it written down as your option 1, full service, $90 a day bus $90 a day to support our full service bus runs.
That's a good way of putting it. The $90 a day is a very good way to put it, per bus.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I'm going to do a roll call. Kristen Richardson,
Aye.
Chris Esposito,
Chris Esposito, aye.
Jen Pesci,
Jen Pesci, nay.
Fred Clapp,
Fred Clapp, nay.
Natasha Bansfield, nay.
I will make a motion to implement option 3, adjust level of service.
Steve, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Natasha, before that, you just have to get a second and then a discussion.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry.
we'll see if the motion is either seconded or not seconded, and if it's not, it just stays there. If it's seconded, then you can go to discussion.
Okay.
So
What is the motion?
Freddie, can you repeat your motion, please?
Yep. I'd like to make a motion to go with option 3 to adjust the level of service, to implement the 2-mile rule and change the routes to work with the current seat capacity of 225 seats.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so now discussion, Natasha.
My question is, the busing, I believe, is going to be the largest expense that we're facing. Is it possible to table this issue? And I would love to address the cleaning issue because it's important and it's going to be less expensive. In my opinion, the cleaning affects every single person. I know the buses are great, and again, I'm a huge bus fan myself, but the cleaning, in my opinion, we should be putting in front of the buses.
A motion need to be voted on.
Correct.
Okay.
So to Freddie's point, a motion is made and seconded to be upvoted or downvoted in order to proceed, if there's no more discussion on the topic.
Okay, so I will roll call. Fred Clapp,
Fred Clapp, aye.
Jen Pesci,
Jen Pesci, aye.
Kristen Richardson,
Nay.
Chris Esposito,
Nay.
Natasha Bansfield, nay. I would like to perhaps look at the cleaning piece. And then again, I don't want to get ourselves in a position where we've already committed money and then can we do the cleaning piece first? And then do the buses?
Yeah, I mean, you, as chair, you can certainly decide the order of how you'd like that conversation to go. You've had 2 motions, voted down. So certainly that is off the table. There's no outstanding motion right now. So if as chair, you'd like to have that conversation, certainly that's your prerogative.
Okay, so Steve, I saw your email obviously come in earlier and I did go over it. I'm not sure that the other members went over it. Do you want to add some detail?
Sure. What was asked from the last school committee meeting, and it wasn't just Middleton, but also Boxford and Topsail had some questions about trying to get a little more information about specific costs associated with augmented cleaning support. What I mean by augmented cleaning support, based on our last discussion, is that at Fuller Meadow, we'd have a total of 4 FTEs, 2 in the morning, 2 in the day shift, I should say, morning shift, and 2 in the second shift. At Howe Manning, there would be a total of 5 FTEs, 2 in the morning, 3 in the evening. And so with that being said, we're looking at an additional 2.5 FTEs. And if I base that on an hourly rate of $19.85 an hour, which we received from our vendor AMS, who's on state contract FAC 81. And I estimated 8 hours a day and estimated 172 days. Multiply that times 2.5 gives me an estimated cost exposure of $68,284, all subject to change based upon the need. What I'd like to think is as time progresses, hopefully things get better, guidance gets relaxed, and we won't need as much support. But in terms of what our exposure is or what our need is right now, that is my estimate, $68,284. So a little more information for the committee. We are in the process of generating what I'm calling purchase order / contracts for the vendor that I have not to exceed amounts that are a little higher than this, but just to make sure that I've got it covered. And then we will move forward under state contract FAC 81 and we get rolling. So I've already sent schedules out. The vendor has already started sending in employees doing query checks, and we will get ready to deploy that temporary staff as soon as we get them. So we're trying to move that as quickly as possible. So I hope I answered your questions. And again, this is in conjunction with the email I sent on October 8th. And I'll answer any questions that you have, Madam Chair.
And that email is in conjunction with the previous motion made at a previous meeting, entertain a motion for the superintendent to authorize cleaning support as needed. And then that motion was amended a little bit later on to be reviewed after 30 days. So that's a motion that we've actually looked at all 3 towns to engage in the idea of reviewing it after a 30-day time frame as we continue to make our way through this and deciding, you know, where we may need increased staffing or decreased staffing from a cleaning perspective. So Steve moved on all of that based upon previous motion to authorize additional cleaning as needed and then to be reviewed every 30 days.
So Steve, how does it work with the contract if it's 172 days for $68,284? What happens if in 30 days something changes and the guidelines are relaxed? What is our, are we able to get out of that, or how does that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yes. In the purchase order, which I can use as a contract, so I have the vendor sign it as well, that we've put in there a little sentence besides the specific language about complying with FAC 81, meeting guidance set for COVID and DESE, that as needed. So I have an as needed little sentence in there. And we've been working with them for a while. They're an established vendor for us. I think we've had a positive overall experience with them. So I don't anticipate any issues.
So Steve, the 68,000 is really just an estimate at this point, but I would imagine these people are the people that the company is like an hourly type of thing. It's not a salary. So they're just gonna at the end of the week say they worked 20 hours and then we're not paying 68,000 up front. We're paying for however many hours they worked per week or per 2 weeks. Absolutely. Or whatever, correct?
Absolutely correct. So to answer your question with some specifics, that when I gave you that information, that is my estimate, all right? That I'm saying, okay, listening to what the committee is based on not just what the committee is thinking or concerns about, but also talking with Director of Facilities. What are we gonna need to meet that guidance, to make sure these buildings are properly disinfected and maintained? That's where we got the staffing piece. So once we have the difference in terms of staffing, we say, okay, this is how many FTEs we need. And then we go to the vendor and they already gave us that hourly rate. So you're absolutely correct. They will bill us on the hourly rate. What will happen is they'll send me an invoice. At the same time, we have timesheets for ourselves. So head custodians will maintain timesheets. So we'll make sure that the timesheets that the temporary staff are filling out reconciles to the invoice. If not, then I go back to the vendor and say, look, you've got 40 hours this week for this person, yet my timesheet only says 32. And I'm going by my timesheet, so I'm adjusting your invoice to reflect that. You know, so we'll have some reconcilable issues. People will make mistakes filling out timesheets, but we'll get through it. But we're going off of the timesheets.
Steve? Steve?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in the absence of hiring these FTEs, are we paying a premium to AMS right now? Are we paying for this service right now?
Yes, we are. We have, well, here's the thing. We have not deployed the full, you know, the full complement that we've requested and that has been voted. They're in the process of getting ready to do that. We do have temps working at Howe Manning now because we have people out for various reasons and or vacant positions. So we are using AMS right now.
Okay, I know so we're paying more than the 1985,
No,
I'm assuming.
85
You're
an hour.
Is the 1985 an hour, is that, okay, so is that the AMS premium, or is that what an FTE would be being
It
paid
is-
at?
it
So
is-
once you hire,
The way I'll answer you, Kristen, that's the AMS rate. That
Yep,
I
okay.
believe that's a rate that Steve Clifford worked hard and negotiated with AMS on that. In speaking with AMS, their normal rate's 22.
so are they gonna get us people? I guess I'm confused.
So when the people are temporary. So when, yes,
Yeah.
AMS is providing
Okay,
us with
they're through
temporary
AMS,
help.
I see.
In the same breath,
Okay,
we're trying to fill positions that we need to fill. But right now,
yeah,
we're cleaning. So
Yeah.
we're scrambling to get that done.
okay. My last question is this necessary regardless, well, besides a remote, is this the same headcount need if we are hybrid?
Yes.
If we're in this, we are. Even the half-day hybrid, you still need 2.5
Yes, ma'am.
heads.
Let me
Okay.
say why. That
Yeah.
Town Manning is the perfect experience that we're right now. That we need 2 people in the morning disinfecting that building in real time. And then for Howe Manning, we're gonna need at least the 3 to do the deep clean at the end of the day. And the thing is, you need that because you're going 5 days straight. There's no break in between. And that is also the case with Fuller Meadow. Once we start utilizing the Fuller Meadow campus, same thing. Need 2 people in the morning for constant disinfection and cleaning. And then we're gonna need the deep clean in the evening. So that we have communicated that is definitely a necessity based upon the guidance right now, and strongly recommended that to the committee with the appropriate backup, and that's what has been voted to be reviewed every month. And then we'll fine tune at the will of the committee. Any other
So
questions?
are you asking for, what are you requesting from us? This information is really helpful.
Nothing, with all due respect, nothing. That was already voted. So we're,
Yeah, okay.
it's just making sure we've answered all your questions. And that I've already executed the order. So guys, get me these bodies so that we can get going.
Okay.
So we're going.
So 70,000. Does the CARES money pay for that?
Well, we've got the CARES. We're partnering with the CARES for a couple of other things. The COVID relief fund for part of it, because again, we can't front end load. So part of it, and then the other part could be budgetary exposure, depending on how far it goes. A lot of uncertainties, and we appreciate everyone's patience with the uncertainties, but to guide you to the best of our ability, we're putting numbers on it based on what we know right now for cleaning and transportation.
And what about that fund that was going to be between Middleton and Masco and
That's
Tech, I believe.
that's the CARES money.
I forget what that one was called.
CARES. That's
Okay,
the
then
CARES.
what's the other one called?
COVID relief.
No, that's it. We have COVID relief. That's ours, and that's
Yeah.
about $155,000 rough off the top of my head. 154.9.
Okay.
We have ESSER grant, which is really
ESSER grant.
yeah, that's
One I
only
was thinking
20
of.
something on it, and those dollars are spoken for. And
Okay.
then there is the remote learning technology essentials grant, which again will be. I'm not speaking for that, and will not commit that because that's for technology related expenses. So we are strictly working with the COVID relief fund grant operating budget. We've hit CARES up for the tents. We've hit CARES up for the HEPA filters. And the town was also gracious enough, and this is new information to the committee, that we're also trying to move forward with infrastructure upgrades to support remote learning and also the increased activity that we have in the schools as we go forward. So all that infrastructure works multiple components, and the big component is the new firewall. Firewall is about $93,600. Middleton offered to pay for 1/3 of that. Oxford, the other, offered to pay the other third. Now we're just waiting for Topsfield. but that would be a huge win for all 3 districts if we're able to get our infrastructure updated to support not just remote learning, but Wi-Fi and online learning on campus, because I don't see it as one-to-one anymore. Someone walks in the building, they literally get 3 devices hitting the network. So I've always said it should function like a utility. It needs to function like a utility. You turn on the light, you don't think about it. Our internet should work the same way. So we're also working on trying to upgrade our bandwidth and our Ethernet network service as well. So that's another thing, another topic for another day. We'll do an update with the TTU on Thursday on that.
Steve, one question about the tents. I know you had mentioned to me in a conversation, we should talk about Jersey barriers. It had a large price tag associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to kind of find where we are as far as, I believe we were renting the tents month by month.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes, that's
so
correct.
When is that set? When is that set to renew?
Well, what it is
Sorry, I'll shut my camera off. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
You're okay. That it's month by month, so I'll probably get another invoice somewhere around mid-October. And, after that, we're going to be paying attention to when we want to wrap it up with the tents, because with the Jersey barriers in Shea, we don't want to get hit for an additional month. Like, they got to have so much notice. So we're going to want to make a decision when we wrap it up with the tents so that we have Shea back in a timely manner to remove those Jersey barriers so we don't get hit with an additional monthly charge.
Okay, so is that a discussion we need to have tonight or no?
I would say no, ma'am. Not your tent. You're all set with the tents. We're moving forward. We have a partnership with the town that we're charged, that we've already sent over the first invoices, all the procurement to the town to be paid that first month. So we'll be probably communicating with Seacoast again to get the next invoice, send that over, and we just keep moving forward. But I would say sometime in the next week or two, we're going to want to make a decision to when we're going to wrap it up. And the superintendent, again, will correct me if I misspeak. That may not necessarily be something we need to ask the school committee to vote on, but, can be decided between the principals, Steve Clifford and Dr. Morrison. If the school committees do want to memorialize that in some way, shape, or form, maybe they want to do a motion at the discretion of the superintendent. Because, we will vet this out thoroughly and then make a decision.
Yeah, I think to that regard, Steve, I think I'd like to wait and see until you get that next invoice in. We have a meeting early November. We'll see what the time frame is. If it fits in the early November meeting, that might be a great spot to have that as an agenda item. If we feel as though it needs to happen earlier than that, we can certainly consult with the chair.
Great. Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, so do we want to come back to the transportation piece? I think that the cleaning and the transportation were the two sort of large items on the list. So I just wanted to make sure that from a cleaning piece, we were square, because it affects every single person in the building, in both buildings. So would anybody, has anybody's opinions changed? Would anybody like to make a motion regarding transportation?
And so basically what we're saying is we have to pick one or the other at this point, because we don't have the funds to do both.
To do, Chris, to do both what?
Well, we don't have the, whatever that number was, to do the additional buses.
124 for the buses, right?
120, yes.
Yeah, 124.
So we don't have that 124 plus 68,000 for cleaning. We don't have both of those numbers. So
I will remake the motion. Option 3, adjust the level of service to implement the 2-mile rule and change the routes to work with the current seat capacity of 225 seats.
I will second the motion.
Fred Clapp,
Fred Clapp, aye.
Jen Pesci,
Jen Pesci, aye.
Kristen Richardson,
Nay.
Chris Esposito,
Nay.
Natasha Bansfield, nay. Steve Greenberg, can I ask you another question? Sorry, this is a really important topic and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here.
And I just also want to make sure everybody else knows on the call, because I see a lot of like shaking heads. This is the first time we're discussing this as a group, so we need the time, and please allow us that time to discuss that. Thank you.
So Steve, Chris, okay, so I want to just make sure that we're all, everything is, we're all on the same page. So the 68,000 for the cleaning will be applied to the COVID relief. Is that correct?
Not all of it. Remember, we got to spend it by December 31st.
Right, December 31st.
So
Okay.
only a portion of it.
Okay.
And I
So
think, remember, Natasha, excuse me, it's a maximum exposure, right? And I think that's always the word that you want to come back to. That Steve has calculated that out to, if I know Steve, probably June 30th of 2021. Is that
June
correct?
16th. June 16th.
So he's calculated that out to June 16th of 2021 to give you a maximum exposure number on what that cleaning would be to points that have been made if we find that we're, like, the state goes into some sort of a shutdown again, or there's some circumstance like that maximum exposure becomes less. So that's the all-in number, so to speak.
okay, so, but we also have the CARES Act at the town level. We have that funding available, which we have in a previous meeting signaled to Andy that we would be interested in accessing. So is this a situation where we would, if we voted on this tonight, then go to Andy and say, we have a specific dollar amount, 124,000, we would be interested in asking for from the town?
The thing is, again, CARES has to be spent by the end of December. So they're not going to be able to partner for the 124. They'll only be able to partner if they're willing to, because we're not the only department.
Right.
That they're only going to be, excuse me, they're only going to be able to partner with us for a portion of it. So if we implement this, we're talking about a couple of months, October, November, and a portion of December. You know, or let's say December, November, and a portion of October. So 2.5 months of this, you know.
So Steve, can you just do the quick math? I mean, if we wanted to do both, we got to use it up. We have 150K. Can we just do quick math and get us through the end of the year?
No.
We don't know what next year's going to be. There could be more money coming down the pipe.
I understand, but right now, I can't say that to you. I can only tell, you know, I can only advise the committee and the superintendent based upon what I know right now. And I know that I have COVID relief fund money, $155,000. Some of it will get PPE, will get charged that, nothing huge. But only a portion of the custodial services, because again, it can only go through December 31st, right. Only a portion of the transportation. You can't charge, so it's either going to COVID relief or CARES if the town decides to partner with us. That I can't front load it. I can't do anything like that. So
no, but what I'm asking is, if we have 150,000 to work with, yes. And we know that the head count's going to be, the custodial head count is going to cost us, $70,000 for 12 or how many more months? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'm just saying, can we do the math for the next 2.5 months and use up the 150 by the end of the year? How are we going to use up that 150 by the end of the year?
We have to use it though.
We got to figure that out. Really, we really do have to figure that out. Whether it's.
But if we could do it for bus and cleaning and get us till the end of the year.
Only for the months where you're incurring those expenses. If we get to the point, if I may, if we get to the point where we get to the end of October, and we don't have other expenses to charge there, then I'm coming back to you to say, guys, I would recommend that we take care of any infrastructure issues associated with technology to address remote learning in this fiscal year, as well as in-person learning, and address any deficits associated with bandwidth, but really specifically hardware because we can buy those things and pay for it in the footprint of December 31st.
Kristen,
But I guess what I'm missing is if we have, I mean, we can't vote on a bus, right? On what to do with our busing. If we had enough money to cover us through, if we could apply our CARES dollars to the next 2.5 months of incurred bus costs.
Yeah.
And it covers cleaning costs.
For 2.5 months.
Why wouldn't we use it towards that? Yeah.
You definitely can, but it's not going to be $150,000.
Right. Less than that.
Why couldn't we give NRT half a payment up front?
You can't do that. It's illegal. I don't, pardon me for using the term. You can't front end load on that. You can't do that. It's state law and regulation. You can't, the audit and our town accountant and the auditors, they'll pick up on it and they push it back. So I'm sorry, but we can't do that.
Steve, is my comment does that make sense or am I off base?
No, you're not off base. I want to make sure I'm understanding you, but the way I think I'm understanding you is in answering you, yeah, okay, transportation, if I say 2.5 months, so I take the 124 roughly, or, divided by 10, for me, and then multiply it by 2.5 just for laughs. Okay, that's 31 grand. So then if you do the custodians, and let's say that's another 15, so you're at 46 roughly. I'm ballparking it. That's only 46, and it's a good problem to have in that sense. Yet, unless something changes in terms of the deadline for CARES and the deadline for COVID relief, I can't say to you, yeah, we can charge it all to those 2 grants, and/or the town will partner with us. We have to ask them if they're willing to partner with us for that as well. We've hit them up for about 131,000 plus so far.
I don't think Kristen's conversation is around charging just as much as you can to it. I think that's what I'm hearing Kristen say. It's like
yes, oh yeah, the best, absolutely. It's just not the 155,000. It's going to be something less.
I'm just wondering how we cover the costs, and if that's I don't know what the motivation is for not voting. I don't know what the motivation is for not voting for option 1, but I'm assuming it's cost. And if we can cover that cost using funds that are available to us through the end of the year, because we have to use those funds by the end of the year, that's all. I'm wondering if that's an option. And then we reevaluate. We don't know where we're going to be December 31st.
And that's the beautiful part of it is you'll be reevaluating on a monthly basis. So
we're doing it anyways.
As far as options, right now my answer is that difference is going to hit the operating budget, and we're going to watch it just like we've done it year over year, and we keep communicating it to you monthly if there's a concern or not, and if we have to do a freeze, we'll do a freeze. This will not be the first year where we've had unbudgeted expense or exposures that we've had to address in our operating budget, and we've done it. We pay attention to these things, we watch them closely, and we communicate in real time when we need to. So I would say to the committee, at this point, I'm not nervous about our financial situation. It's way too early. That we have a lot of people watching it in my office, working with the town accountant at town hall. We're all keeping an eye on these things, and we're trying to work with positive intent and in the best interest of students and staff. So we're going, but as for the committee, just know that right now, the difference, in my opinion, is going against the operating budget, and we're going to keep an eye on it. And if I've got an issue, I'm going to bring it back to you and say, guys, here's our problem. And I'll also try to have a remedy in my pocket as well.
So the difference being the $70K for cleaning and the 124, if whatever, or less, whatever that ends up being. Those 2 things are going to hit our operating budget.
Yes.
I see. I think it's important to note, we've turned back money to the town because we are very cost conscious. Steve does an amazing job planning and budgeting, working us through this budget process. So I think, I forget who mentioned it, but where are we getting this money from? We do budget appropriately, but we're in a we started the budget process, in November, December of last year, pre-pandemic. So, everything has changed. So
Yeah.
we may end up favorable again, like we have for the last, 4 years. That I've been on.
We've
So.
been in a good spot.
Yeah.
We have a great partnership with the town. Town
Yeah.
administrator, the treasurer, they do a fantastic job working with us, and we're very appreciative of that. So
Exactly.
it is definitely a team effort between the town hall and us.
Yeah. So I think the funding will be there. I guess that's what I'm trying to put through.
I wouldn't disagree with you, based on how I feel right now, but we're just watching it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can get the funding, would that make a difference in a different motion and different voting at this point? We have to vote on this tonight. We have to do this tonight. So I'm just trying to figure out what will make it a positive.
I guess, Jen, I'm curious, is there a reason, is it the funding that concerns you? You've been through the budget process, so yeah, okay.
I mean, it just makes me nervous spending that much on the bus when we're in a pandemic. And when I go to school, it seems like no one's taking the bus because the line is so long anyway. I wonder I feel bad for people that it would be in the 2-mile radius, but also I feel the cleaning is so important as well. And if something has to go, I would say the busing would go before anything with the cleaning, obviously, because of COVID and.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say.
I'm just not hearing from Steve that it's one or the other. I guess that's where I'm confused.
It's not.
It's not one or the other.
Yeah, it's not my place to say that.
Yeah.
I can present the numbers to you, and it's up to you to use that information to help with your decision.
I think it's what we're tasked with is policy, and so what policy are we comfortable with for our district and our students and families, and to change the level of service that we've provided because of costs that are not necessarily an issue right now. I just don't understand. I guess I'm just trying to understand better what the motivation is.
I think the lady at DESE had said that, how it seems so cost prohibitive to go back to school. And she said that most people are voting on the 2-mile in order to afford things in a lot of towns.
That's one data point. Is that one data point? I don't know. I just think about, we're not like most other towns. I don't think we have to go by a data point there.
Well, I mean, the town going back full time, not full time, but just all kids at once seem to be voting on this in order to afford it. I mean, I had the questions, how is everybody in New Hampshire affording this? And it's well, they don't have the same rules as us. Our rules are really strict with how many kids can sit on the bus. So it just seems like transportation is so expensive for us. And I don't know, it's been a problem. We're getting a lot of transportation issues. The busing costs are just crazy.
Steve, if the guidelines changed and hypothetical, the guidelines went from 25 to 50 on a bus, like 2 in a seat, do we have any flexibility on the other end with NRT, or you're in it at the price they've quoted?
No, we would absolutely. Again, I go back to that. I believe we'd absolutely have flexibility. That if the guidance changed and we could put 50 on the bus, the routes would get revised. We would reevaluate, and we would look at the information we have. We revise the routes, reissue, and rock and roll from there. This is under normal circumstances. Transportation season, in terms of Q&A, usually ends by the end of September, early mid-October. I was saying to Donna Ricola, my administrative assistant, it's going to be perpetual budget season for the year. We're going to be updating the routes in all 3 districts constantly as things unfold. And it's also going to be families saying, "Ooh, changed my mind. I would like to do this instead." Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that now. So it's going to be a perpetual budget season this year.
Steve, I just have another question.
I know. Go ahead.
Thanks. I just have another question for you. To Jen's point about the data point she got from Desi, you are tied in with most of the ops folks in our area. Are you finding that feedback to be consistent with what you're hearing?
Well, I think everyone, here's to answer your question. The one time where I've had discussion via our listserv with my peers was interpretation of the guidance. And the question was, well, if you allow siblings, does that mean that you could have 50 kids on a 77 passenger bus? No, it's 25. So everyone is wrestling with the same thing that I am. I take that information a little bit, that I am very focused on what we've provided for service in the past, and the goal trying to be to maintain that service. That if I'm able to maintain it, that when the guidance does get relaxed, it makes we can just remain constant with the routes. We don't have to revise, change. So that has always been my goal in all three towns. Establish the routes, provide a level of service that is the same level that we had for FY20, and try to hold on to that as long as we can. So that's where my focus is. So I listen to my peers this much, and then I'm looking at my situation this much, and that's where my focus is, and that's how I develop my strategy to communicate and recommend to the superintendent and the school committee.
Yeah, and we've always been in a very unique position in the three towns to be able to support, our smaller class sizes, our service of safety and accommodation and convenience for our buses. It's a very different policy and philosophy, and we'd be moving away from that if we change that now.
That is correct.
Steve, do you have that number? I know you've said it, and I apologize, I can't find it in my notes, but do you have the number of people outside the 2 mile radius? And then is there any way to, not 2 mile radius, but whatever.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And then are you able to cross-reference that with anybody that filled out a survey? Hold on. Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
You're staggered and broken up. So if I'm understanding you, you're asking me, do I have the number of people on the survey that are 2 miles or more? The answer is no, that I need to do that overlay work. It's not going to happen overnight. Again, I've got Boxford and Topsfield routes that we need to get out tomorrow to the families. So we're in full bore trying to get that done. So this will be after the fact, in that they would have to overlay that information, with student lists, and then put it into TransFinder to figure out, okay, here's all the information, and then what number. So I don't have that yet. It's going to take me a little bit to get it. I would suspect that at the end of the day, we'd have more seats than the number of people that live 2 miles, more than 2 miles from their assigned school based on the survey. Awkward silence. Is there any other questions?
Thank you, Steve.
No, thank you.
Would anybody else like to make a motion regarding the transportation? I appreciate all of that information. It definitely shed a lot of light for me. I don't want to, be on the hook for more than we can afford. So I just wanted to do the due diligence and ask the questions regarding the transportation.
If I knew we could definitely afford it, I would be fine with the transportation. I'm just nervous about the large cost. So I don't know what to say.
So Steve saying that we don't have to worry about that right now change? I agree with you. I think it's good to know that, hearing from Steve that it's not a huge, that we're not at risk right now. I don't know if it's worth putting another motion out there. It's, we've tried it 3 times, so I just don't know if people's opinions have changed. And you've gotten the answers you needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the purpose of the deliberative process. It's an opportunity for, all thoughts and ideas to be unearthed so that people, when they're making decisions, they're knowing all the different components that go into it. I think, as we had said, there are unknowns. The 2 other big unknowns, and Kristen, you touched upon it, is that do they extend the date for the CARES, right? That's a possibility. That date might get extended. I don't think you'll see anything happen until after the election around any conversation associated with that. And then will there be another stimulus package, right? And will that stimulus package be directed and geared towards schools at all? And so those are, it's unknowns on top of those unknowns. It's just making a decision now based upon the information that you have, that Steve has been able to convey to you up until this point. The point about, comparing to other places and looking at other places, I think that's hard to do because there's not other places that are necessarily back in the mode that Middleton is back in terms of the 5 days. So that's another data point that's tough to do that comparison.
I'll make the motion again for going with option 1, $90 a day for full service.
I will second the motion. So Kristen Richardson,
Aye.
Jen Pesci,
Aye.
Chris Esposito,
Aye.
Fred Clapp,
Fred Clapton, nay.
Natasha Bansfield, aye.
Okay, so just again on that, just a side note again, that we will probably need to do a staggered start and release time. And then again, Dr. Morrison, correct me if I misspoke, but.
No, I think certainly from, you've articulated that already, Steve. I think that perspective of if you're going to have multiple runs of buses, you obviously can't bring everyone in, at the same time frame because of the seating restrictions. And so I think certainly you have articulated that in the perspective of what that would look like for a start and end. I think what we've seen so far at Howe Manning is that transportation starts off challenging and then begins to settle in after a certain amount of time. That's no different than any other school year. And so my anticipation, my guess would be as we look to provide a level of service to all of our students, knowing the capacity that we will have, it will lead to that, and it'll take some monitoring and adjustments and conversation as we continue through that process.
Scott, would the staggered start, and this may be a really, maybe I'm not thinking about this right, but would the staggered start and end be, could it ever be per family or does it have to be per school?
Yeah, I think that's, there'll be logistics to work out regardless of, any other decisions that are made, right? So we've been in a model where we've had K-2 back. We were able to integrate 3rd grade because it was working under a model that was back in place. And so any further discussion now around that topic and around survey and things like that involves both schools coming into play. And so if it involves both schools coming into play, there will be, yes, absolutely logistical things, Kristen, that, would need to be worked out.
So I just hope everyone realizes what they voted for. You just opened up another can of worms, another logistical nightmare.
Freddie, how do you figure?
Well, think about a staggered start and how that would work.
Well, I
the
think
whole thing's a logistical nightmare. I don't think there's any this is all difficult.
I've only been to the school. My kids have been taking the bus, and I've only been to Hal Manning twice. And I mean, traffic is horrific. So I cannot imagine having more cars at that intersection, or same for Fuller Meadow. I mean, I was certainly nervous about the expense, but I literally can't imagine that many more cars converging on either of the schools.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Okay. All right, so I think we should probably talk about the survey results. Does anybody from the board have any thoughts or comments on having reviewed the survey results?
I guess, what were you trying to find out? What were the answers? What did the answers tell you? I thought the survey was really hard and challenging to complete, because it felt like you almost had less options. And for me, I'll be honest with you, I was confused because I thought our hybrid model that we voted on back in August was the 2 days on, 3 days, 2 days off, and then half day. So it didn't provide any information about how we were safely going to get the students back into school in a half-day setting, safely being, 6 feet apart. Because I think that's a criteria for, some of these parents, that information wasn't provided. So are we saying our hybrid model is a half day every day, and it doesn't matter if they're
That's the hybrid that we're in. That's the hybrid that we're in.
For K through 2.
For K
that's
through
what we voted
2.
on.
And right, that's what we voted on, and that's what you and everybody else sent their kids in on, the K through 2 model of 5 half days, because we voted on that. We never voted on that 2 days in, 2 days out. It wasn't even a model that we entertained. So this was the hybrid model that we entertained. I think that when we discussed it last week, I think you might have missed it, we were trying to talk about 4 to 6 getting in, and that was kind of where a lot of the confusion happened. I think a lot of people thought we were trying to just throw 4 to 6 into the Lions, and that wasn't anybody's intention. So I think we really need to, think about the conversations that were had last week. All we were trying to do was get everybody in safely, phased in, however that needed to be. If that's a hybrid, if that's a full day, however that ends up being based on this survey. That was why we needed to have this survey, to figure out what people wanted.
Scott, the hybrid model that we voted and sent to DESE, am I incorrect that we didn't vote for? I mean, yes, Chris, you're right. We did vote for this for K through 2, but that was to go to Hal Manning, so it was very different. This wasn't, this was just to start. Our hybrid model that we approved and sent to DESE was the 2 days on, 2 day remote, half day remote. So I guess, maybe that was just my confusion, but I didn't understand when it just shifted and if that was really clear. And I went back and listened to the meeting, so I know what was talked about.
So to answer your question, the plan that we had to submit, as you guys remember back in the summer, we had to submit a plan to the Department of Education. And the vote that was taken around that was, with the understanding that as conditions may change, the model may get updated. I forget the exact wording of it. And so that was one vote to, submit the plan, but the understanding that as we learn more about the context and the conditions on the ground and all these other things that are related. So that led to the follow-up motion to return to school half days in the model that we're in right now. So that's how that unfolded.
Can I just ask now, so do parents must assume then, when they're answering that their children may not be they may be considered, within that close contact range of less than 6 feet.
I think based upon votes that the committee has taken, I would, I certainly don't want to answer or think for a parent. Everybody, has their own, thoughts and opinions and ideas. But I think if you base it upon what the school committee votes have been, then it would be for 6 feet being the goal. I think that was the phraseology that the committee had, with an understanding that and a willingness that if it had to be less than 6 feet, but not starting at 3, but starting at 6. And then also the idea that the hybrid model that we're in, that would be the model that would be considered, because that's the model that is in at this moment in time. That's the voted model currently for pre-K 2.
And to assume that that's so that's pre-K through 2, but not
pre-K
4 through 6.
Yeah, 3, not 2, but yes.
Right. So 4 through 6 is all right. I must have misunderstood. I thought the 4 through 6 model was not half-day hybrid.
Well, it was in the survey. It said in the current hybrid model. So the current hybrid model is 5 half-days.
For K through 3. For everyone else, it's remote.
Because everybody else is remote. So 4 through 6 is remote.
Yeah. So if you go to the approved hybrid model that we submitted to DESE, it was 2 days on, 2 days off.
But we never
So
saw
do you
that.
think we should take the kids that are in school right now, 5 half days, take them out and put them in for 2 days on, 1 day off?
I'm just talking about the 4 through 6, but no, I do not. No, you don't have to get difficult.
It's not getting difficult. I'm asking a question. That's what I'm trying to figure out, which hybrid you want, because it sounds like you want that one that you think that we submitted, the 2 days in, the 1 day off, the 2 days in, when in reality, the hybrid that we've been doing right now is 5 half days. So why wouldn't we stick with that model for the 4 through 6 if it's been working for K through 3?
Because the only reason it works for K through 3, let's be honest, is because we're at Hal Manning and we have the space. When we move back to Fuller Meadows, it is not clear to parents who are concerned about safety that we can do it at 6 feet of separation. In fact, we couldn't do that, and that's why we went to Hal Manning.
To be clear, Hal Manning.
Well, we went to Hal Manning because we didn't have the filters. That's why we went to Hal Manning.
I think Diane said last week, first grade's not at 6 feet right now. Am I correct? They're like a little less than that. And I think she said Fuller Meadow, they're going to be very close to 6 feet still when they move over. Is that correct, Dr. Carrera?
So Diane had to drop off the call.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
okay.
But the understanding is that everybody is working with a 6 foot, the motion from the committee was
3 to 6, I know.
General education students, this is the original motion, K to 2, with every effort being made for return for high needs pre-K to 6, all at Hal Manning, following the DESE guidelines of 3 to 6 foot spacing, to be reviewed in October with all other students in Robust Remote Learning 2.0. And then the follow-up motion was regards to including 3rd grade in the 5-day, half-day return to school if there are applicable rooms for classes to be spaced out based on the survey.
Right. Is Fuller Meadow ready? I think that's like the $1 million question.
Yes.
It's ready.
Yes.
Okay. That's good.
MERV 13 are in, that the HEPAs are in, the balancing report has been done, and so that all that information is, from a perspective of, is all the information in equipment in? Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Are we waiting on any reports?
We have a final report coming from the HVAC consultant, correct?
And when do you think that will be
If
in
it's
here?
not in my inbox by the end of the day today, I would anticipate having it tomorrow.
Oh, great, thanks.
So I look at the survey and I see grade K through 3, 70% want to go back to a full-time in-person model. 4 through 6, 8% want to go back to a full-time model.
Brian, can you put that back up again?
That is, to me, that's a majority. The majority of the parents in town want their kids back in school.
So Freddie, one clarification I would make to that, and you're not wrong in the sense of the slides that you're looking at. I think if you go up a little bit more, Brian. So the preference slide, I think that was the important question that, Natasha wanted to make sure as a chair that we make sure we ask that question 4 to 6 along with pre-K to 3, because we had it in the survey as a pre-K to 3 about a preference. What would be your preference? And so these slides kind of give you what the preference is by grade level. And then if you go down a little, Brian and Freddie, I know the slides you're referring to, it then talks about if then, if the committee votes to transition K-3 students from hybrid to full-time in person, how would you respond? And there could be a number of contextual factors associated, obviously, with the response to that. But you have 70% there saying full-time in person learning. And when you go up, that's the if-then statement, Freddie, just for a comparative sake. If you go back up, Brian, go up to the next one. You can see the number from a preference perspective is about 52. So just it's a clarifying point, nothing more. But just want you to be aware of the preference versus the if-then. That's all. Does that make sense, Freddie?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm very aware. I'm very aware of the preference.
Does anybody else from the committee have any thoughts or comments on the slideshow?
I do remember Diane saying that about Fuller Meadow, so I thought it was that we were going to be at 6 feet, or if not at 6 feet, as close to 6 feet. I thought she said that last week. So, I don't know what needs to happen. She said, I know she mentioned using the specialist rooms if she had to, because they weren't going to be there or whatever. So I do think that we never voted on 3 feet. I mean, we voted on as close to 6 feet as we could possibly get, and that's our goal, and that's always been our goal. It looks like we're there at Hal Manning. If we're not there at Hal Manning, somebody please let us know. But I mean, everybody that has their child in school right now thinks they're at 6 feet. So if they're not, maybe somebody should let those parents know that.
So Chris, when you say at Hal Manning, do you mean the Fuller Meadow kids at Hal Manning, or do you mean the third grade at Hal Manning?
I mean, everybody at Hal Manning,
Yeah.
K through 3.
Yeah, and so I think what we learned, I think what was identified last week, and Jeff can certainly jump in as well, that the 6 feet is certainly there. It makes for, it's tight. I think that's one thing we're seeing, that from a teaching perspective. I think someone said at the top that, the 6 feet of distancing sort of puts the teacher in, a particular spot, to maintain that 6 feet. But yes, I think the intention and the overall goal is that the day starts at 6 feet, and then certainly, kids squirm in their seats and move around, and, the teachers, I'm sure, are doing a lot of redirecting to kind of get back into their specific areas. But Jeff, do you have a perspective on third grade?
Yeah, we certainly have the capability of being at 6 feet, as well as keeping a 6 foot runway, if you will, at the front where the teacher can move, where the smart board is. Scott's right, though, some of the desks they do end up moving a little bit closer, and we do need to recenter those every once in a while to make sure that they remain at 6 feet. And it is.
Jeff, would that be for the 4th through 6th graders as well?
Yes, we're at 18 in a couple of the third grade classrooms and still maintaining 6 feet. I don't anticipate that any of the other grades would go higher than that. Higher than that, we will have a problem, because then you would stick the teacher right behind her desk, as there would not. Any additional desks above 18 would have to go into that 6 foot runway at the front.
I don't know if I am allowed to say this. However, we have to put iPads in their backpacks and lunches in their backpacks every day. So that's not 6 feet apart.
Who's speaking?
Laurie Murphy, I'm sorry.
All right, sorry.
I'm
Unfortunately,
not allowed to talk. I'm sorry, I just can't listen to this.
appreciate the comment, Laurie, certainly. But from a school committee perspective, the public comment part did pass.
I would, if we get through this before we vote, I mean, I would be more than happy to open it up to some teachers because, I mean, let's be honest, we haven't heard from any teachers. We've heard from a lot of parents. We've heard from ourselves, but we haven't heard from any teachers. So if they're willing to you know, give us their perspective of being in the school, I'm more than happy if the committee agrees to open that up. I think it's, you know, there, you know, like Dale said, she's the one that sees it. So, you know, whatever, if we get to that point. But going back to everyone's, you know, 6 foot, Jeff, you were saying about the 4th through 6th grade. You think that they're at 18 right now, so you'll be able to get them in as well.
I don't know the numbers at 4 through 6 yet. At 3rd grade, we do have some 18. 2 classrooms are at 18 and they're at 6 foot. The desks are at 6 feet apart. I haven't had a chance to disaggregate the numbers of how many kids would be in each classroom through 4 through 6 yet, but I don't anticipate that it would be higher than 18.
And so, Chris, to your earlier question, that would be at the discretion of the chair, as we've talked about, you know, previous meetings, that if the chair wanted to extend any type of public comment, you know, that has happened at some previous meetings, but that would be at the discretion of the chair, just to answer that question.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the guidelines of, you know, close contact is defined as within 6 feet for 15 minutes or longer.
Anybody else from the committee have any strong thoughts or opinions or anything else you want to sort of, I mean, again, to the general public, we are not allowed to discuss this before the meeting. So, I mean, it's a lot to receive. We received the survey data roughly an hour or so before the meeting. So it's a lot.
I would like to just make the statement that, you know, we did receive a lot of emails and I think all of us read them.
Oops, Jen, I think we lost you. Jen, can you hear us?
It was just completely unstable, my internet. Sorry, I was just trying to let people know the reason why we do this survey is so that we can get a better feel for how people, what their opinions are on sending kids back to school. And it's not like it's my own agenda when I make a decision. That's why we did the survey and that's the point of it. Just in saying that I received all those emails from residents. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I thank you, Jen.
I would actually like to sort of add on to that sentiment. We did do the survey. I'm glad we did the survey. It is completely impossible for us as 5 school committee members in the community to speak to every single family and hear from every single family on what worked for them. I completely appreciate every single email that we get and I read every single one. And you know what? Lots of times families point out things that maybe I haven't considered or, you know, I don't, it's not something that I deal with on a daily basis. So it's good for me to hear other circumstances. But again, to Jen's point, it's all of us. I'm sure nobody in the community envies the position that we're in. It's been an insane amount of work and stress, and it's quite frankly awful. It's an awful position to be in. I'm trying to do the best that I can as a volunteer, and I genuinely care about the kids in this community. I genuinely care about the teachers in this community. It's just an unfortunate position that we're all in. And I'm like I say, I'm glad that we did the survey. I do not have a personal agenda. I have never had a personal agenda in any of this. I genuinely want to do the right thing. As many possible as we can. In a perfect world, I would love to offer every single family all 3 options. That would be incredible. But we are stuck in a situation where we are able to offer remote and either hybrid or full in person. And I know that it's not possible. Hybrid is going to upset some people, and full return is going to upset some people. And it is what it is. It's part of this awful thing called COVID. But I would ask. Oh, sorry. I would ask some folks in the community to. I know you're frustrated. I get it. We're frustrated. This whole thing is awful. It's awful on 1,000 different levels. But I would ask for maybe just a little bit more empathy for the position that we're in, because I feel like maybe it's just because this has dragged on for so long, and I get it. I totally get it. But it's starting to feel a little bit personal, and it's not really a great feeling. So sorry, just to share with you a little peek into what we're all sort of dealing with. Kristen, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I agree with you, Natasha. It's a terrible position for anyone to be put into, and I completely agree. I appreciate the hard work you've put into this. I think, there's a lot of ways to interpret a survey. And I think it's a great data point to have, but there's also the element of safety and allowing our children to get a good education in these circumstances. And so when I think about the difference between what we're doing now, and yes, I have a child in that situation, and it's working, it's going really well, and I hope that it can be sustained, because that's ultimately our goal, and get better from here rather than go in the wrong direction. But when I look at, putting our kids in school longer, I have to wonder, what is the benefit of having them in school from an educational perspective and from a safety and health perspective, then, continuing to do what we're doing now by, keeping our numbers low, although we continue to have a case a week, but keep our numbers low and, ease back in, so that perhaps we have a goal by a certain point when numbers continue to be low, that we look at maybe adding more. I do think, you guys Natasha, you were spot on when you said that, lunch is going to be an issue. And, logistically, I wouldn't want that job. And, to have them sit in the classroom and eat lunch after they've sat in the classroom all day, and if they aren't 6 feet apart, then they can't do that. It just seems like one more element that we're adding on to everyone's plate that may not have the benefit and the value that we're looking for from an educational perspective. And then, they do their special, which this was actually news to me. I guess if they're going to do their special, or when they do their special, it's still a specialist remote on a screen. So it's not live and in person. And then, you'd have that last half hour. And, someone mentioned talking and listening to the teachers, and I think I think a lot of us have talked and listened to our teachers, and have certainly tried to stay in touch with them to see how they're doing and what's working, what's not, what are your greatest challenges. And, I just go back to last week when Diane and Jeff made it, they were really clear, and I honestly respect their opinion, and I think that they represent our teachers and the operations of the school. And so, I would heed, their opinion and their direction in helping us to inform our own. So I appreciate the survey, but it's one data point. I think it's feet on the street that really should, help us in coming up with our next steps.
Kristen, I just want to clarify the comment that I had made about lunch being a nightmare was made way back in August. On August 3rd, the school committee attended a walkthrough of both buildings. We were at Hal Manning. I've left it, I have it in my notes. We were told at the time, granted, things have changed, like everything else with COVID, the data, with the more data you get, things change. We were told at the time, 17 to 18 kids in a class would be spaced at 3 feet. I think it was 14 to 15 at 4.5, and 6 feet was 12 to 13 students. We would be looking at 9 lunch periods. In a normal year, we're at 4 lunch periods. We'd be looking at 9 lunch periods. We were also told at the time that I believe there were only going to be 30 desks in the cafeteria. Well, fast forward to where we are now, we have items, bookshelves, whatnot, removed from the classrooms. We are currently fitting 17 to 18 students at 6 feet of spacing. So lunch in the classroom, while not ideal, and I will say, I remember standing looking at the classroom saying, oh, this is not really great. However, now that we've been in school since September 16th, I have a child eating lunch at 10:50, a child eating lunch at, when my daughter was home, eating at 11:30, and another child eating when he got off the bus at 12:30, alone. So I've kind of made my peace with the lunch portion. It sounded like a rat's nest. However, the fact that some students, some classes, depending on the teacher, depending on the classroom, depending on the configuration, might be able to eat in their classroom. Also, I know Fred went back and measured the cafeteria. We can fit lots more than 30 students at 6 foot of spacing. So I know that was mentioned in a few emails, actually, the logistical nightmare comment. And again, I would like to point out that that was 9 weeks ago, and we have a lot more data now to go on. So I would not want to count out lunch as an option based on the numbers from August 3rd, is my point.
Jeff, in the app, it'd be great if Diane was here too, but Jeff, since she's not, is okay. So great. Maybe it's not an issue. Is it a worthwhile endeavor to keep the kids in school, to have lunch there? Do you think is there a benefit to it?
I think there's always a benefit to being face to face. There's no question about that. The question then becomes, again, for me, it goes back to how many kids, if the goal is to get as many kids in as possible for core instruction, we are going to have fewer kids in the building if we go full in person. But yes, it is always better to be face to face. There's no question about that. Nothing replaces time with the teacher in the classroom. You can't replicate that on any other level. So yes, there is a benefit to being in full time. From an educational perspective, there certainly is.
Great, that's helpful.
So we can talk about this all night, and you can twist the data of the surveys any way you want, but if you look at it plain and simple, the majority of the parents want their kids back in school. If this was May or June, I would agree a phased approach would probably be best, but this is October. We're in phase 3 of reopening in Mass. Daycares have been open since June. Bars and restaurants are open. Gyms are open. Casinos are open. Movie theaters are open. Essential businesses have always been open. And I feel there is nothing more essential than a child's education. Now, if some parents are still uncomfortable, stay home, keep your kids home. I support your choice. But let's not take that choice away from someone who has a different comfort level than you. And with that said, I will make the motion to a full-time in-person model for grades K through 6.
I'll second the motion.
So Natasha, you want to see if there's any discussion?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Yeah, I would love to see if there's discussion. Anybody have any thoughts, feedback?
Is there a date? Is it one viable? Two, is there a date that this would be done by?
Just the 5 days notice.
Yeah, there's an agreement within our agreement that we have. It's a minimum of a week's notice. There are pieces associated with returning people and materials back to Fuller Meadow. So there's that component to it. And then there's the pieces that will be related to transportation and other logistical items. So I think to answer your question, Kristen, from an agreement perspective, it's a minimum of 1 week. Any move between models requires a professional development day to be tucked into that time frame, and also 3 afternoons of time for any sort of move of materials and people and things like that. So there's all those logistical pieces that would have to be worked through, and I think Steve is probably going to weigh in just from a transportation perspective.
Madam Chair, could I address the committee?
Please.
All right. So yes, Dr. Morrison's absolutely correct. Quite frankly, I think I would need at least a week for routes to be developed. Again, we've got a lot going on with Boxford and Topsfield for a 15th rollout, and to really literally redo these routes and plan for it has to be a staggered start-stop. So I understand Fred's motion, but we have to plan that out as well. So I need at least a week. A week is cutting it really short. I just need you to know that. Thank you.
We need to vote on the motion.
Hold on, Fred. We're still in the discussion portion of the events here. I had mentioned this to Scott and Steve, this idea a week or so ago, and I don't know if it's definitely a financial. I don't even know if it's something we can afford, but I know what the survey results say, and I feel that the older kids, it seems, particularly I believe 6th grade, had quite a few parents interested in a full day return. However, when we pivoted to hybrid back in, I don't even know, early September, we prioritized our youngest learners because I really think it's important. Sorry. I think it's really important that we give those kids the best shot at learning to read and write. And sorry, this has been a very long road.
It's a lot.
And I would hate for those kids, for the parents who don't feel comfortable with a full day, to pull those kids out. And now they've already, met with their teachers, and we received a lot of letters around this. I have a kindergartner. I get it. Is it something that we could afford to have our older students go full day and have our younger kids stay in the hybrid model that's currently working for them?
Natasha, 70% of the kids in K through 3 would go full-time in person.
Agreed. And I see, I saw the survey results. However, this is the stuff that keeps me up at night, is the kids who, of course there's families that are going to opt out of the gate regardless for whatever reason for their family remote works. And I totally appreciate that. But there's also going to be the kids in the middle, the kids who are currently in hybrid who are not, the parents aren't there yet. as far as being comfortable with a full day. And those are the kids that I'm worried about.
So,
Steve, can you answer Natasha's question about the cost implementation of doing the two schools differently?
I'm sorry, Dr. Morrison, I believe we need to vote on the motion that was made.
you have a motion that is made and seconded. That is discussion right now. So the chair can determine if this is still discussion, or if you wanted to either vote the motion up or down. If it's voted down, then the motion fails, and then further discussion can certainly ensue. If it's voted up, then the motion passes, and there are marching orders underway and conversations that have to be had and meetings that will take place.
Well, I mean, I'm interested in that as well. I just didn't think it was financially feasible to do 2 bus runs. That's why I didn't know it was something, but I am interested in the answer. If there's anyone that could answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, Freddie, I hear what you're saying. Believe me, I get it. We voted on this, whatever, a month ago, so I get it. But I also hear Natasha's point, and I also read all of these emails that are referring to us as monsters and not people, and saying we have our own agenda. And at the end of the day, we're all parents with kids, and all of us want the best thing for everybody. So I would ask that whatever this vote, whatever way this vote goes tonight, just have a little bit of grace, as Dr. Carrero would say. And, you know, we're just people. And, you know, we're just here trying to do the right thing.
So it doesn't go into, and Natasha, this is your call as chair. So a question's been asked of Steve, which may lead to another question asked of Steve, which may lead to another question asked of Steve. Do you want to handle the motion to see if the motion, because the motion, if it does pass, it passes. If it fails, it can always be made again, like happened with the bus motions. And so as chair, you can decide and determine if you want to continue this as part of the discussion, or if you want to, you have a motion that's made and seconded.
The way, and again, Fred, I completely hear you on the survey results, and I would love for my kids to be in school full time. I'm looking at it from a trying to meet the needs of as many kids as we possibly can. I'm also looking at it from the standpoint of, if we allow how many kids to return full day, where Jeff is saying we definitely have the space, there's, in my opinion, there's no harm, no foul in keeping the K-2 children at hybrid. Even if we were to say we're going to revisit it in 20 days, we'll see what the infection rates are like. We'll see. It's not, they're locked in hybrid for life. It's, for now, they're going to be returning to a brand new school, never set foot in before. I am really worried for the children who have now been in school and will be pulled out. So I would like to continue the discussion. Whether that means I need to decline or, you know, thumbs down on the motion for the time being, I'd like to have this conversation because I think it's an important one.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to have the conversation as well. So I'm not sure how you continue the conversation.
I think you would need to
vote down the motion.
Well, at least, yeah.
So I need to do that, Scott, yes.
Yes.
That's been made and seconded.
Okay, so I, as the chair, am going to vote down the motion because I would like to finish.
You have to ask us, I think.
Yeah, you've got to take a call of the whole committee, Natasha, to see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Fred Platt.
Aye.
Kristen Richardson.
Nay.
Jen Pesci.
Nay.
Chris Esposito.
Nay.
Natasha Bansfield, nay.
So now that motion is off the deck, and if you have a specific question around other items, we can now pursue that.
around, sorry, my internet connection is unstable. Are you able to answer some of the questions that I was just asking regarding the hybrid or the K-2?
I'm assuming you're asking me if there are different costs or additional costs or something different than what I communicated if you have different times start and dismissal for K through 3 and then 4 through
K through
6
2.
or K, thank you, K through 2 and then 4 through 6. Is that correct?
I am. I guess I'm asking the 124,000 that we voted on at the beginning of the meeting, and we talked about the staggered start time. Would we be able to somehow utilize those buses to allow for 2 separate models in one town?
So the arrival, Steve, would be the same if you're thinking about it from that perspective. The arrival time doesn't, I get the staggered part of it, but the arrival time morning is still the morning. It's the afternoon where you would have a sort of midday run, so to speak, for a certain segment of the population, and then the end of day run for the remaining students.
Okay, so then let me answer. I can answer that question. Scott, you'd have to have a staggered start time. If not, you literally have to have twice as many buses, and you're not going to get that. They don't have the resources to meet that obligation, so it has to be a staggered start. And as far as dismissal is concerned, you could do that. What you have to be sensitive to is where Masco is going to be getting dismissed. So let's say it is that half day. We've got to make sure that those runs get done so that they can take care of the Masco runs and then come back to take care of Middleton after the Masco runs. So we have to be sensitive to those pieces when we're developing our, and I'm sorry, I have to keep saying this, staggered start stop times. In terms of cost, the 124 was like a maximum exposure. You voted for $90 a day per bus. So let's talk it through that way. And those costs will not change. Why? Because you've got to run the buses twice. Twice in the morning, twice in the afternoon. So regardless of what time, that's going to be your cost. The only thing that may bring that cost down a little bit or change that cost would be the time of start and stop. So let's just stay with the $90 for now to keep the conversation consistent. Yet you're running them twice. There's no savings. As far as cleaning is concerned, in my opinion, you're not saving anything. You still need 2 people in the morning to be disinfecting in real time, and then you're going to need people in the afternoon for the deep clean because you have people going into the building every day. As soon as they go into the building, that integrity is compromised and you got to clean. So it doesn't, in my opinion, Madam Chair, it does not change the exposure that I have communicated to you.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, because I don't have anybody at Masco, is Masco going in, their hours are going to be the same that they always were, correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's what I understand with communication today with my counterpart.
So then it shouldn't really affect us. Then we should it would just be the same that we always do.
Well, it depends what you do for a staggered start and dismissal. You want to make sure that if you're doing, let's say, a half day, right? If you dismiss the students at a certain time, we want to make sure that those runs get completed in enough time so that when they've made their last drop off, they've got enough time to get to Masco, stage up, and pick up and take home the Masconomet students. And then, yes, everything after that should be normal. But you know, when you're doing an early dismissal, you need to be cognizant of what's going on with Masconomet.
So Chris, in typical times, the Masco buses, and Steve, we worked there for a number of years, the Masco buses start to muster around 2 to 2:15, and they start to pull away at that time. They do their runs, they get to the elementaries by 3 to 3:15 across the 3 towns. And so to Steve's point, we have to, the runs are always, I think they always try to budget about an hour right? When you think about, a run happening, from the Masco to the Tri-Town, kind of a dynamic. And so, again, at the beginning of any year, that always takes a heck of a lot longer just because it's the beginning of the school year, and then it settles in and the routines develop. And so if you had something where you had a midday exit of a certain number of kids, that would have to be built around, you have to think about an hour for that, and the time to get to Masco, and then a time for come back and do the rest of the pickup that would take place if you had a different fuller day model.
But Scott, that's how they're going to be operating come Monday anyways, with the, the way we're in school right now. So it's just be adding on the end of day route, which we've done that, that's consistent with what we've done in the past as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
You had a conversation with Masco about them starting on Monday, or not with Masco, but with NRT about those kind of moving parts?
So in my discussion with my counterpart, I just asked the question, where they were at in so many words. Busing at Masco is beginning on 10/19 will look exactly identical to normal operations Monday through Friday. Absolutely no change to the number of routes, time, or frequency. And the only thing that he added a little later is that they'll be doing late runs on Tuesdays and Thursdays Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at 4 p.m.
That would be like the 4:15 run, right? That's the hour.
Yeah.
Right.
So Maxwell parents haven't received anything yet. They're getting them. We're told we're receiving information tomorrow about what the return to school will look like. Jeff. I'd like to understand, I think it's an interesting thought. I think it's a good idea. I want to know, what are we not thinking of, or what are some risks to doing it this way? It seems like the benefits are there for the 3 through 6. It gets those kids in the building. If we have the space, which we knew with Fuller Meadow we could, or not Fuller Meadow, Hal Manning, we knew we could. You're confirming that we do. What do you foresee as some of the issues that we would be running up against?
The logistics of it is still an issue. I do not love the idea of eating lunch in the classrooms, particularly from the standpoint of allergies that we have in the classroom. It is right at 6 feet, which does not make me incredibly comfortable either to be taking their masks off at that. I would prefer it be greater than 6 feet if we're going to take our masks off. I also think you're not gaining that much time in core instruction. It's about 15 minutes in math and about 15 minutes in reading that you're gaining by being in full time. That half day, we cut our core instruction by about 15 minutes in both of those areas to get that time in. The additional time is really lunch and recess. The specialist will still be there. It will still also be remote. We can't put the kids into the specialist classroom. So the specialist would have to remote into the student's classroom, which will also mean we will need adult bodies to go into that classroom to still monitor the kids. So I'm not, and I also think we're, looking at the survey, the difference, the 80% and the 74%, about 6% of our kids, you're looking at about 20 kids that will not be going to school that would have if it was a half day. And that piece concerns me as well. And we're also increasing the amount of exposure. The length of time matters. It's 15 minutes, and I would imagine that the longer you are in the presence, the greater the chance of transfer. But I think those are the risks. Again, the benefits are, yeah, there's nothing that replaces being with a teacher all day. But there are risks associated with it as well.
But it doesn't sound like we gain being with a teacher all day. We gain recess, lunch, and proctor.
You gain some more time. Some more time.
A half hour. Okay.
Jeff, thank you for your thoughts, because I do really enjoy hearing from you and Diane, because you guys are in the building and you're the experts at the school. I have been thinking about the lunch piece quite a bit, and I was a lunch monitor at Fuller Meadow last year, and lunch is bananas on any given day. However, the new lunch obviously would look a lot different, meaning separate, 6 foot of spacing. And I know, like specifically at Fuller Meadow, there's just a lot of wrestling and playtime and spilling and dropping and up and down and over. There's not a lot of actual eating. There's maybe 4 minutes of actual chewing of the food. And I hope this doesn't sound like a scary proposal, but when I'm thinking about how best to, if we were to move forward with a full day and lunch, in my head, the kids who are coming into the cafeteria are coming in, they're sitting down, everybody is getting settled for lunch. Your hands are clean, we're get your lunch ready, everybody. And not so much on your mark, get set, chew, but okay guys, it's gonna be a 12-minute window. You have 12 minutes to eat your lunch. Particularly for that age group, 3 to 6th grade. 12 minutes is a long time. I've been watching my kids. I mean, they can bang out a couple of slices of pizza in like 4 minutes. So I really feel like giving the kids less than 15 minutes to be abundantly cautious, giving them, 12 or 13 minutes. And again, not to sound like, it's some sort of a race or whatever, but if the children are separated from each other, I really feel like you're going to be taking away a lot of that not wasted, because it's fun time for them, I get, but the non-eating time. And then, when the clock goes off, guys, it's mask back on, so if you haven't finished eating, I'm sorry, it's mask back on. And then there's time at the end for talking. And but that's sort of how I see it. What are your thoughts on that?
Are you saying end lunch early? Not have the 20 minutes of lunch, or the masks have to go back on?
No, I'm saying be very diligent about it's the 15 minutes of exposure, right? I get it. If we're right at 6 feet, then that's right at 6 feet is, not ideal for 20 minutes. So I'm saying, what if we were to really, or you and the resources in the building were to really nail down that window and say, we're literally going to have a timer, and be very cognizant of it. It's not a 20-minute, chewing situation. It's going to be, we're going to watch it, and it's going to be, 13 minutes or whatever the case may be, because it's not worth, risking the exposure. But I really feel like 13 minutes is a long time.
I would say that's true for a lot of the kids. That's not true for all of the kids. Some of them do take, and to be honest with you, there's some that we have to give more time than the 20 minutes that we have to allow them to be able to finish. So it would work for a number of them. It would not work for all of the kids.
Okay.
But I understand your point around that, to limit that time. You get the mask back on and we're no longer there, but that's not going to be, it won't be for everybody. It will be for a lot, but it won't be all.
Okay.
And we do, lunch, that 40 minutes, that is the teacher's lunch as well. So they are being, so it's not, so we can't shorten lunch. We can't shorten that lunch recess period. That still needs to remain the 40 minutes. And I know that's not, that wasn't your point in that, but that time needs to stay the same, that 40 minutes. And actually we would have to, again, depending on wherever lunch took place, we'd have to extend those times a little bit to allow for deeper cleaning, obviously, of the the desks that they're eating in. Again, if they're both, be that in the cafeteria or in the classrooms, it would actually end up being extended a little bit longer.
Okay, thank you.
And Natasha, to a point you made earlier as well, the idea that, you know, the decisions that are made are not, as you think about like that next step, they're not permanent forever, right? It's like, let's come back, look at it again, review, discuss. I mean, that's going to be part and parcel of every school district over the course of this year, as you think about models and decision making and things like that. So I think that's just another piece to consider as the committee grapples with, you know, all of this information and trying to figure out what a potential next step could look like.
Okay, so that being said, Scott, I mean, why can't we just, you know, try this out? Try out a plan, you know, for the time being that we're talking about, you know, whether it's keeping K through 2 in one model, 3 to 6 in the other model, with the intent of we're going to keep these moving goalposts, as you've always said, and we're going to keep an eye on it, and we're going to revisit it. And, you know, we need to vote. We need to set something in motion, because these 4 through 6 kids have been home, and that 6th graders are going to Masco, and Masco is going back to school, and they need to prepare to go to that school. And I don't think it's fair to keep them home because we can't figure out how to make them have lunch. So either we get them into school half day or we get them into school full day, but we need to get them into school.
Yeah, and so, you know, you can look at that from both sides of the equation, Chris. You could look at it from, you know, making that decision to your point of moving everybody to that half-day hybrid model and going from there, right? And then reassessing after a certain amount of time. There's a measured approach to that I think resonates somewhat, because when you think about comment that was made at the beginning, we have had a couple of you know, positive circumstances that have appeared, and we have had you know, it is a 2-week time frame that, you know, needs to be monitored and looked at. And you know, I think that idea of taking that measured approach as we continue on, getting more kids back, getting them into that half-day model. We've heard from the principals that that's really where they feel as though they get the most bang for the buck, so to speak, in terms of you tend to lose less kids to remote. And at the same time, you've heard from the principals that there's an opportunity for the most amount of kids to access the most amount of in-person learning during that time frame. So all thoughts to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've proven that the half day is a successful model, right? We've been able to do this for 18 days. Kids seem happy, they're learning, and now they're going to go through another major transition going back to Fuller Meadow. And I think it's, you know, appropriate to see how that transition goes, get them back in their schedule that they're used to right now. And I think, you know, we have evidence that this worked. So why don't we use that information and apply it for our 4 through 6 graders, with the intention that, you know, education is key, and we need to get safety and education at our core values. And we want, you know, ultimately want to get them all back full in person. So, Scott, I have a question. So the schools are ready. We could make this change regardless of what the decision is tonight. We're looking at let's be fair to the bus situation, but we're looking at, you know, 2 weeks from today.
Yes, Kristen. Yeah.
Just to put a timeline around it, it would make it, just for planning purposes, because we're all, you know, all worried and want to see that this moves forward. So if we were to do an October 26th re-entry date, that's doable.
that would be from the perspective of meeting agreements and having conversations and making the move happen. All of those pieces, it allows time for the professional development, it allows time for the move, yes.
Are there other gates we have to go through? Are we gated by anything else?
I don't know what you mean by gated.
Are there any other stoppers? If we, make a determination, we give you a direction with the intention of a 10/26 date, is there anything else, contracts, bus, we talked about the bus, we have the funding there. Do we have to go back to negotiations? Do we need to have any other facilities related checkpoints? Is this a viable option, and can we move forward and get these kids back in school?
So from a conversation with our association, any change, that's part of our agreement, any movement of models, creates that conversation to take place. So that's certainly a conversation that would take place. That would be part of it.
Okay.
From a facilities perspective, as I said, if the report for Fuller is not in my inbox tonight, and I haven't been looking obviously because I've been on the school committee meeting, it should be there tomorrow morning. And we know that the filters are there, and all those pieces that we have been waiting on, those are all in play and in place. So the answer would be yes, that from a building perspective, the readiness would be there. And then from a conversation perspective, we do need to engage in conversations.
Conversations.
With our association.
Yeah.
Is it possible to do a return more quickly than October 26th?
Isn't it a lot less time we need?
I was basing it off of what Steve said for bus schedules. If we're going to be we have to have a staggered bus schedule, and I was trying to give him a little more than a week, but I wasn't giving him much more.
We need more time than a week. I need more time than a week.
It'll be about 3 days.
Okay, so
from a school day perspective, Kristen.
Yeah.
But
so if we wait till the 26th, though, does that mean we can't put 4 through 6 into Howe Manning until the 26th?
Steve,
there's room?
From a time frame perspective, I would imagine the buses and the routes and the things you're going to have to develop, you'll need a little bit more than a week. Is that correct?
That's exactly what I'm saying. This has nothing to do with the buildings or space. It has everything to do with route development. And it's going to be a lot of work, especially when we're talking about a staggered start. So again, factoring in the things we've got going on with Boxford and Topsfield and trying to get that done, I definitely would not recommend a week or anything close to that. 2 weeks is probably a better move strategically for all of the things that will have to be done, not just the routes. So I would recommend the 2 weeks.
And the 2060 would be about a week and a half, roughly.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if that's what's granted, then we got to work with it.
So my internet's been a little in and out here. Are we saying we cannot do the grades K through 2 half day and the other grades a full return, 3 through 6?
If you're asking me, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying to you is I need more time to develop the routes than just the 7 days.
Right. No, I understand that. Okay.
Right.
But it can be done.
It can be done.
Oh, no, it can be done. Again,
Okay.
we have to make sure we're paying attention to times. We got to pay attention to masking on it. We don't want to mess them up. And then we could develop the 2-tiered or the staggered start-stop. Regardless of how you look at it, it's going to be a staggered start-stop. That's what it's going to be.
Right.
Staggered stop is happening because we're adding busing. We're adding busing because we're adding students.
You're doubling. What it is the routes will be making the run twice.
Right.
Twice in the morning, twice in the
In the morning.
In the morning
Right.
and the afternoon.
I mean, in my opinion, I've thought that grades 3 through 6 needed to be in full time more than the younger grades, just like Natasha. I thought it would be a tougher transition for the younger kids to go to a new school and go to a full day. So, I mean, I think it's a great idea to try that.
Can I try a motion?
That's up to the chair. Yep.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion for K through 2 to return to Fuller Meadow on October 26th for a half-day hybrid. Continuing in the same model that they're in, I guess. And then on the same day, October 26th, 3 through 6 return back to Howe Manning.
A little more clarity on that, Chris, on the end.
Yeah, I need a little bit of help on the ending part, on the Howe Manning part, because I'm still, maybe it's two different motions. I don't know. I want October 20, I want to put that into motion. October 26th, get the kids into Fuller Meadow, K through 2. So maybe I'll just do that one.
You said the half day. I'll second that. K through 2 half day in Fuller
October
Meadow,
26th,
starting out
K through
October 26th.
Yep. October 26th, because that's the soonest we can do according to the buses. October 26th, K through 2 moves to Fuller Meadow, continuing in the same model that they are currently using today.
I'll second that.
Okay, Chris Esposito,
Chris Esposito, aye.
Kristen Richardson,
Aye.
Jen Pesci,
Jen Pesci, aye.
Fred Clapp, Fred,
Did he hang up? Is he on?
I think he's just muted. Brian, can you unmute Freddie?
I have to know his phone number.
It should come up as Fred Clapp.
While we're waiting, I mean, I don't know if I have to add this, but obviously we know that this is going to change and we're willing to look at the goalposts and all of that and the numbers and all of that stuff. So that's not something that needs to be added. That's something that's already known within that, correct?
Down the road, you mean, Chris?
Yeah, like it's not a half day forever.
permanent, right?
Yeah.
It's not permanent.
Right.
Correct.
So we're just waiting on Fred to.
Yeah, he is muted. I can't. I'm pressing unmute and it's not unmuting him. But he has the availability to unmute.
Just try.
May have stepped away from the computer if someone wants to text him. So Natasha, if you have 3 so far, I can try to get a ruling just to kind of see procedurally. Want to make sure we're following procedure correctly. If we just have a member that's having trouble unmuting, if there's another way to communicate a vote. So if you want to give me a minute, I can inquire about that.
Sure, thanks.
Hello?
Hey, Fred.
Yes, I apologize. I had spoken with the chairwoman prior to this meeting. I did have a prior engagement. So, what, was there a vote? Can you read it back again? Hello?
I made a motion, I made a motion, Fred, just for, I don't know how much you missed, but we found out that the soonest we could get, anybody shift in modality would be October 26th, according to buses from Steve. So, I made a motion for October 26th for K through 2 to return to Fuller Meadow in the same hybrid that they're in right now, with the intent of obviously going at it, and changing as we can. So they would be K through 2 into Fuller Meadow on October 26th in the hybrid.
And 3 through 6 at Hal Manning?
We have not talked about that yet. We did not vote that yet.
We're breaking it into two separate motions, Fred.
So not for full in school, for hybrid. I really think everybody, faculty, administration, even members of this committee, we're doing a disservice to these children. And the constant back and forth, and there's no clear direction. My vote is nay.
Natasha Bansfield, aye.
And I just wanted, if I can clarify it, I think these kids are really little. They've been through a lot. They're not supposed to be at Hal Manning. They're supposed to be at Fuller Meadow. So we're putting them back where they're supposed to be. And I think it's going to take time to adjust to that. There's parents that have never even drove into the Fuller Meadow parking lot. There's a lot of things that are going to change, and there's a lot of adjustments that need to be made. So giving them this half day is just a little bit of consideration for the little kids that take longer to do everything anyways, as we all know. So, I think it's just giving them a little bit of time, and then hopefully, we get everybody in when we, for a full day of school when we can.
Can I make a motion for grades 3 through 6 to start on the 26th full time?
So, got a made motion?
If you made that motion, I will second that motion.
I just think it's important, Fred, if you weren't listening, and I appreciate honestly your position, and I know it comes from a good place. But in case you missed it, Jeff, we just asked about the benefit of being in school longer, and although nothing takes away from kind of that in-person kid being at school in person, they're not gaining much instructional learning by staying beyond lunch. And, his position, which I thought was very important, and we all asked for his position, was that the benefits didn't outweigh the cost to go full in person.
I disagree. As Jeff had mentioned, it's at least 30 minutes more of core education, and then the face-to-face contact, which is invaluable.
I also, we took a survey, and I know we're not, counting everything, but we do need to count that data in. And we had 75% of parents voted for full in person. I mean, what are we gonna do with that 75% of people that want their kids in school full time? That's a lot. That's a way more than the majority. I don't know. That's the percentages that we got.
Yeah, and to that point, it's a phase, so we're not looking to, it's not indefinite, right? So the objective would be to get them full in person, just not starting out that way. phasing them in like we did with the other kids, to get the teachers in, get the kids in, get the school up and running, assess, safety protocols, assess the benefits, and what's going on, what's working, what's not. Let them get up and running, and then, do an assessment and get them back in full in person. I completely agree. That should be our goal if we're able to do it safely.
I would like to see, on that note, I would like to see what is the date, October 26th. So if this motion passed, the third graders would roll on October 26th from a hybrid to a full day. And obviously I would defer to Jeff, obviously. But in my thought would be, we would start out on the 26th, which is a Monday, and third grade would be full day. And maybe we bring our fourth graders in for a couple of days, whatever, again, open for discussion, but so that everybody's not, rushing through the front door at the same minute, but it gives the administration time to sort of, okay, we're shifting gears. Our third graders should be pretty well settled in the building. We're introducing our fourth grade, and I don't agree that it should be a phased in hybrid over a period of a month or so. I think the older kids are ready and a lot more apt to handle it.
So if we did third grade on the 26th full day, the 27th, fourth grade comes in alone, full day till the 28th. The 29th is fifth grade till the 30th. Then we're at Monday, November 2nd. But then there's no school on the 3rd, right? So then we're looking at that first week in November for sixth grade. If we give every grade 2 days of their own time, basically.
So Chris, just for clarity's sake, and that would have to be a friendly amendment to the motion, because the motion that was made was one thing. And so we'd have to see if there'd be a friendly amendment to the motion. Oh, yeah. And before we go there, just for clarity's sake, and if there's not a friendly amendment, the original amendment would have to get voted and then either up or down. And then if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, then a new motion with, the language that you had on there. I hope all that makes sense. And then just from a clarity perspective, so people have an understanding of what they're thinking about, if I'm hearing you, third grade would kind of start their full day gig on the 26th, while fourth, fifth, and sixth stay in remote, correct? And then the fourth grade would come in 2 days later, while the fifth and sixth stay in remote. Is that okay? So you're nodding your head. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure from a transportation.
We, especially where sorry, Scott.
That's okay.
Especially where third grade's already been in the building for a while. Why wouldn't we bring fourth grade? And I just hate, we're already looking out another 2 whole weeks before.
Yep.
Fourth and sixth graders are, it's like, oh my gosh.
Let's just get these kids back to school. I don't see the point in rolling. I would just say, we've got to get these kids back to school.
If you were looking for my opinion on that, I don't see the benefit of it either.
If you don't see the benefit,
then good. Okay.
Yeah.
I think.
So my motion was good.
Your motion still holds, Jen. That's
correct. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so Jen, sorry, can you just repeat it just for one more time so that we just went on a sidebar. Sorry about that.
Sure. I made the motion for grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 to start full day on October 26th.
Okay.
And you had a second from Freddie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. My internet connection was unstable. Freddie seconded it. Okay, I'm sorry. I missed that. Okay, so Jen Pesci?
Jen Pesci, aye.
And Scott, I just got a text message from Fred. It's his family. He's having a family member's birthday party, and he just texted me and said I need to get off of the call. So
Fred clap. And now I'm getting off. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Fred.
Thanks, Fred. Okay, sorry, to Jen. Chris Esposito,
Chris Esposito, aye.
Kristen Richardson,
Nay.
Natasha Bansfield, aye.
Kristen, you just said you wanted everyone back to school. Yeah, no, that's my motivation, getting everyone back to school safely. I think you phase it in the way we did with the other children. And I just don't see the benefit of going full in person right away, especially if they're not getting much more than lunch, recess, and a proctor sitting in front of them while they do their special.
All right, so from a marching order perspective, from a next steps perspective, we will engage in the steps that need to be taken following these votes, and then go from there.
Thank you.
Scott, will you let us know if there's a delay in the 26th? I mean, how are we going to know if you still have gates to go through, right? So it would be nice to know if we're moving into November because of this vote.
No, absolutely. I will, stay in touch, certainly as we do across the three towns with Chair, in terms of any pieces that may unfold over the coming days and weeks. So we've got our marching orders, as Mr. Greenberg likes to say, and we will begin the process of executing on those orders.
Thank you. Is there anything else in the other folder?
I don't believe
Yes.
so. Natasha, give me 1 second. No. Nope.
Scott, I had one more thing.
Oh, Jeff, you do. Right. Thank you. Thank you. That's right.
Yeah. I'm looking for the board's approval to reduce the band tuition for the year. The band will be, it will be remote. The lessons and everything will be remote this year. According to the guidance, we cannot use woodwinds or brass instruments indoors. It's not feasible for us to do those morning lessons outside. I'm sure our neighbors would have something to say about that, as well as the temperature in the morning as well. So what I would like to do, since we are going remote, is to reduce the tuition for that by half. So it would be, instead of $300 for beginning band, $400 for advanced band, it would be $150 and $200 for those two things.
And Jeff, you and Steve have had a conversation about that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Steve, how does that impact? Is that a significant impact on the budget?
We'll work with it. You know, we're fortunate again to work with the town so that we were able to preserve to the best of our ability our revolving accounts, so that we're able to pivot for the unknowns. This is a very reasonable request based on what Jeff's communicating for the reasons why. And so, again, it's all part of the big picture that we're watching, and I have no issues.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea too. Absolutely. I'll make that motion to reduce the tuition for instruments.
So hold on 1 second, Kristen. Darcy, where was Darcy? Did you get the amounts? Do you need the amounts set again, or did you get them?
You're on mute.
Just want to make sure we get it in the minutes.
Do you want it just to say by half, or is there a specific number that?
Steve Greenberg, Jeff, is it exactly half?
It is exactly half, yes.
Yeah.
And we're fine.
150 and 200. Correct?
150 and 200, correct.
Yes. So those are the two half amounts, $150 and $200.
Are they for different instruments? Does that need to be in there, or just?
No.
No.
It would be all of them.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Darcy. Kristen, I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks.
Okay. So I made the motion. Do you need me to restate it?
Probably right.
Okay. Darcy, can you read that back?
Okay, hold on. Approval to, this is before the price was in here, but approval to reduce the band tuition by half for the year.
the lessons will be remote. So I would put in there 150 and you said 300, correct?
200.
200, sorry.
So Kristen, that motion would work.
Okay. So
I'll
I'll make a
second it.
motion to okay, thank you. Thank you.
Kirsten Richardson,
Aye.
Chris Esposito,
Aye.
Jen Pesci,
Aye.
Natasha Bansfield, aye. Okay, anything in bills and payroll?
Steve shaking his head no? No.
No, all set. Okay, great. Well, I want to roll call out to adjourn the meeting.
I'll
Oh,
make
actually,
the
I'm
motion
sorry.
to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Kristen Richardson,
Aye.
Jen Pesci,
Aye.
Chris Esposito,
Aye.
Natasha Bansfield, aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.